No one expects Ray Endo, a broke part-timer, to become the key to humanity's survival. It all begins when he escapes his harsh days by diving into prophecy online. A full-dive VR game so real you can hear, smell, and feel everything, and it promises rewards so huge they could last 1,000 years. Ray laughs it off until a random email calls him the top-ranked tester and drops 1 million yen into his bank account. Suddenly, the scam feels like a miracle, and Ray throws his whole life into the game. Grinding through cruel towers where pain is real and losing means your data gets erased forever. He clears it at last and gets nothing but a thank you message and a shutdown notice. A week later, Ray wakes up and an information panel appears. Moscow failed a trial and was wiped out. The news confirms it. A monster blasts a helicopter out of the sky. Now, Japan is the next target with only 43 days left to kill the boss. Rai finally understands what the admin meant by an invaluable asset. Since he's the only one who clears the game, it means he's the only one with the power to save the world. But Ray is not thinking about becoming a hero alone as he plans to turn the power into money. Rai knows that if the game had become reality, the spots for earning experience points would become battlegrounds. Since he knows where the closest dungeon is, Rai makes his move and he dashes through the street. He can hear the people still talking about the report. Someone even suggests that they run away. But his colleague lets them know that there is no escape since the buses and trains are not freaking working. Suddenly, Rai runs into a blonde-headed dude who screams at him to stop. Rai immediately recognizes the dude as Takuo, the lone shark. Takuo tells Rai that he was just on his way to his house, and he flicks his cigarette stick at Rai's face, telling him to turn around. Apparently, a year ago, public information came out from a certain organization telling about prophecy. Online gamers that their company is willing to lend them 200,000 yen without any interest fee on it. However, this is for those who pass screening, and with this cash, they assure the players that they will have less time gathering funds, but more time playing the game. However, the company lets them know that they are going to be taking half of the rewards earned from the wealth. When Rai sees this offer, he realizes that it is a good offer since the money is interest-free. In addition, Ray is relaxed because he only has to pay the money when he has earned enough. Without thinking twice, he borrowed the money. But he soon realized that it was a trap. Just as promised, 200,000 yen was deposited into his account. But the moment he finished using up the money, a contract with an outrageous interest rate was sent to him. The company told him that he didn't pass their screening, and because of this, he owed 50% interest in just 10 days. Threatened and scared, Rai started looking for ways to pay the debt. He even sought out card loans with lower interest rates to gather repayment funds. However, whenever Rai tried to repay, the company would intentionally cut off contact and wait for the interest to grow. When Rai could no longer repay the money, the company resorted to using forceful collection methods. Now, in the present day, Chilyu has tracked him down, telling him that it is time for him to pay the money. Rai then reminds the dude that they refused to take the money when he tried to repay. Taku laughs at Rai, telling him that he is only making up excuses because he doesn't want to pay his debts. Taku then tells Rai that he needs something else from him, since he already said he would be diving into the game. Taku suddenly grabs Rai, screaming at him to tell him everything he knows about the game. Rai simply tells the dude to get his filthy hands off him. But Taku is pissed that Rai has the effrontery to speak to him the way he likes. Rai then tells him that he is going to give him just one piece of advice, or rather show him. Out of nowhere, Rai activates a skill called the Fist of the Novice, which ultimately increases his fist power by 50%. A blue-like element covers his fists, and before Takulo knows what is happening, he is punched into the distance. He crashes to the ground in pain, and Rai lets him know that in the current world, he outranks him. With the dude barely breathing, Rai leaves him by the roadside and runs off. Meanwhile, some guys are in their vehicle, and they witnessed Rai just use a prophecy online skill. There is a strange dude wearing a hoodie in the car. And with his demeanor, he appears to be experienced in the game, too. But he is surprised that he is meeting an experienced player too soon. The dude can clearly see that things are about to get even more interesting because very soon, law and order will collapse. Moments later, Ray arrives at the dungeon called the Sanctuary of the Goat. Upon arriving at the entrance, Rai realizes that the dungeon actually looks exactly the same as in the game. However, he notices a car parked outside, and he realizes that someone is already in the dungeon. Nonetheless, he proceeds into the dungeon, and as he moves closer, he can smell blood. He gets to the dungeon lobby hall to find a bunch of dead monsters, and standing above them are a group of players. Surprisingly, the dude wearing a hood is there. And Rai asks him if he was the one who killed the monsters. The dude confidently replies that he is responsible, while saying the monsters are called flare lizards. In fact, the dude believes he is the reason Rai is still alive, because the flare lizards are dangerous. Rai is surprised to hear this because with what he knows, the flare lizards are the weakest of the weak. The dude finally takes off his hoodie, telling Rai to become his subordinate since he doesn't have any friends. The dude tells Rai that all he has to do is hand over half of his earnings, and he will protect him. Rai then calmly tells the dude that he is not interested because he likes going solo. Rai then adds that he is super sure that the group cannot beat the boss there. The hoodie is pissed when he hears this, and he turns to his subordinates telling them that once they finish killing the boss, they have to kill him too. The lady among them is surprised to hear this, saying they are already going too far by doing that. However, the hoodie guy says other players are just obstacles, and it is better that they have fewer people who know the game information. He confidently tells them that what he decides is final, and whoever opposes him will suffer an accidental death. Apparently, the boss in the dungeon known as the Smoldering Goat isn't a tough enemy, and once it is defeated, it usually takes 7 days for it to respawn. The dude tells his comrades that they cannot allow anyone else to get the last attack. He then adds that Rai has to stay outside until they have killed the boss. They check the timer, and they realize that there is just over 5 minutes for the door to open. Ray soon realizes that 3 of the players, including the girl, are standing guard to make sure he doesn't enter. Ray playfully asks the trio if their plan is to block his way, and they say yes. They suggest that he wait outside, and even though Rai can easily wipe them out, he decides to just wait around because he knows the end result of their foolish decision. Rai figures out that he is going to make his move after they have all been slaughtered, and he just lets them stroll into the boss's room without challenging them. While they are entering the boss's room, Rai is busy sipping a packet of straight tea, waiting to see how far the dudes can go. The moment the door closes, the team leader asks his comrades if Rai didn't follow them, and they assure him that he didn't. He is glad to hear this, saying it is not convenient for them to have any nuisances around. One of them mentions that Rai might have realized that they were planning to make it look like an accident, but the team leader believes that Rai is not that sharp. The team leader then turns to the shield dude, telling him to stay focused, and the dude assures the team leader that with his shield, the dungeon boss is nothing because he is wielding an epic-grade sealed shield. Suddenly, they are hit with a fearsome gust of wind that is accompanied by a huge fire. Fear grips the team leader when he realizes that something horrible might have just emerged. When the fire effect cools down, a large giant goat with a human upper body, wielding a large hammer, appears in the room. It turns out that this fearsome beast is known as the Scorching Goat, and not the Smoldering Goat that they were expecting to see. The goat lets off a loud roar that sends the players in different directions. They all get hurt just from its roar alone, and the team leader realizes that they are in a big mess. The team members start asking him what they are supposed to do, and he screams at them, telling them that it is time they retreat. However, they soon realize that they are screwed because the door won't open from the inside, while everyone is scurrying to safety. The team leader tells the shield dude to stay back and be the decoy because his shield should be able to block the goat's attacks. The shield guy wants to argue this, but the team leader insists, and the shield guy has no choice but to turn around to face the goat. However, by the time the goat makes its move, the shield guy realizes that he is done for. The goat's hammer alone is huge enough to take in 10 of his shields, and before he knows it, he gets slammed into the ground. When the others see this, they scream out in pain and horror because they know what this means. The goat adds to their fear by picking the dude and his shield to chew them as if they are biscuits. The team sees this and cries out in fear, calling the goat a coward and a monster, which obviously it is. The team leader knows that something like this shouldn't have happened because the monster they came to defeat is called the Smoldering Goat, which is a low difficulty monster that even a level 1 player can defeat if they know the strategy. However, that was an updated version of the story because the original Scorching Goat that appeared in the early game was said to be unbeatable. The dude believes that the unbeatable version should have been removed because this is said to be the latest version. Suddenly, he remembers that Rai is still outside, and since they can't handle it from the inside, he believes that whoever is outside can help. The dude immediately runs to the door, screaming through his lungs, telling Rai to come into the boss's room, assuring him that he is going to share the reward with him. The team leader continues banging on the door, telling Rai to enter because he knows that he can hear him. Just then, the goat swings its hammer again, throwing the team members to the ground just like before. While staring at the goat from the ground, the team leader realizes that they are going to die at this point because the monster is too strong. Just then, Ray enters the room, mocking the team leader for talking so big when he is just a shitty weakling. With a smirk on his face, Rai tells the dude that he is not cut out for the leadership role. The team leader is pissed at the humiliation, and he decides to use Rai as a distraction to escape the boss's room. The team leader then rushes toward the exit, telling his team members to run too, so that they can leave the monster for Rai to handle. The team members acknowledge his order and start running to the entrance. But as the lady runs past Rai, Rai tells her to stop. He tells her that they can't leave the room. This is proven as the team leader rushes to the door, trying to make it out before it closes. However, he gets caught between the doors, and he screams out in severe pain. The goat is pissed at just how noisy the dude is, and the goat walks over to the team leader to smash him to nothing with his giant hammer. This is when it dawns on the surviving team members that they are done for. They start asking what it is that they are supposed to do, and Ray cuts in. He picks up the dead team leader's sword, admitting that he has a good sword, even though he is a weakling. Rai then turns to the beast, telling it that the sword is enough to deal with it, but the beast is pissed at this. The goat tells Rai that since he wants to die, it is going to grant him his wish. The goat swings its hammer at Rai, and it shatters the floor. But by the time he realizes what is going on, Rai is already above his head. Before the goat can make a move, Rai easily cuts off its horns to embarrass it. Ray then walks up to the girl and the dude who survived with him. He lets them know that he is willing to save them as long as they pay him 10 million yen. The girl is surprised to hear this, and Rai reiterates what he said just in case they have both gone deaf. The dude then fires back, saying they don't have 10 million to pay him. And the girl supports him, telling Rai that he is basically taking advantage of them. Rai then tells the dude that if they don't have the money, they have to work for it since they don't want to die so young. Rai tells the two that they are going to work under him and hand over 90% of the rewards they earn from defeating monsters. He tells them that he would have taken everything, but as a service, he is going to let them keep 10%. The two are shocked to hear this, and they scream at Rai for mocking them. They add that even their scum dead team leader was only asking for 50% since they are not ready to pay him. Rai tells them that he has no choice but to abandon them. Just then, the goat regains its strength, and it screams at Rai for cutting its proud horns. The goat assures Rai that it is going to kill it in the worst possible way. The goat breathes fire on them, but Rai dodges the attack. On the other hand, the girl is able to create a barrier to block the fire. But even the after effects of the fire send them to the ground. When everything clears off, Rai expresses his surprise that the two are still alive. but he tells them that he will be waiting to see how long their luck will last. Realizing the danger, the two quickly tell Ray that they are ready to do what he wants. Since they have both agreed, Rai finally decides to protect them. Ray turns to the goat, telling it that it's been a while since he last defeated it. But the goat is surprised to hear this, since it has no memory of losing to a human. Even the two are surprised, and they believe that Rai is speaking nonsense because even in the game, the scorching goat was never defeated before being removed in an update. Unknown to them, the game was never updated because Rai once defeated the scorching goat, and from its subsequent respawn, it transformed into the smoldering goat. The goat tries to crush Rai with its hammer, but Rai easily deflected the hit, shocking the beast. Even the two are shocked to see this, leaving them to question just who Rai is. Rai himself knows that the goat's last attack would have been instant death for even a level 50 veteran player, not to mention a level 1 player like himself. However, Rai doesn't see the goat as a threat as long as one knows the trick behind it all. Rai leaps toward the goat, and he creates a series of confusing movements to leave the goat wondering where his attack is going. Before the goat knows it, it starts to panic because it can't get a single hit on Rai. Before it knows it, Rai lands a powerful slash to its left eye while telling the goat that its movement patterns are exactly the same as in the game. The two who are watching the whole thing unfold are blown away when they realize that Rai is pushing back the monster, and they cheer him on, telling him to take down the goat. Instead of appreciating their motivation, Rai simply tells them to shut their mouths, and they can't believe just how annoying Rai is. Rai continues running around the goat, but at some point, the goat seems to have caught on, and it tells Rai that he has reached the end. Just then, Rai realizes that the goat has cornered him against the wall, and the goat asks him if he has any last words. Instead of showing any sign of weakness, Rai simply tells the goat to drop dead while calling it the B word. Rai then tells the goat that it is so weak that it can't even land a hit on him. This pisses the goat off so hard that it cooks up a powerful black fire breath. The two are shocked when they see this, because they can feel just how intense the fire is. Apparently, the black flame has the power to burn everything, and can even incinerate level 99 players in an instant. To make it worse, it is an area attack, which is why it is the scorching goat's desperate last stand when cornered. The goat believes that Rai has no escape, but unknown to it, this is actually what Rai has been waiting for. Rai immediately activates the beginner skill, called Beginner's Luck. This increases his leg power by 50%, and Rai dashes out of the corner. He admits that the flame that burns everything is incredibly powerful, but this will leave the goat completely defenseless. In addition, the goat's mouth is not strong compared to its bite force. Before the goat knows it, Rai has appeared right above its head, and Rai pushes it to the ground. Since the goat's mouth is not strong, Rai figures out that the strength of a level 1 player like himself will be enough to hold it down. With Rai standing on the goat's mouth, he prevents it from breathing out the black flame. To make it worse, once the black flame that burns everything is activated, it can't be stopped midway. This means the flames will rampage inside the goat's body. With a mocking tone, Rai tells the goat that he wonders if it will be able to withstand its own flames. By the time the flame is done cooking up the insides of the goat, Rai leaps off the goat's head to avoid the immense pressure that it is about to leak out. Rai mocks the goat, saying farewell to it, and just then, the flame finally gets to leak out, and it erupts into a large fire that destroys the goat. Rai makes the superhero, landing with the fire behind him, giving him a spectacle or a firearm. Moments later, the notification comes in telling Rai that the unique boss, Scorching Goat, has been defeated. What is left of the beast is a charred body. And the two are left in shock because Rai managed to defeat the boss, and they also survived. The lady is blown away by the fact that Rai just defeated such a scary monster without a scratch on him. Rai soon gets a notification telling him that he is the first player in the world to successfully defeat a unique boss. Because of this, the system informs him that he has been granted the unique title, the First Slayer. Rai is surprised to see this, since this is a system he has never seen in the game. It starts to dawn on him that this might not be the same game that he knows, thanks to the title. The system tells Rai that damage inflicted against bosses will increase by 50%. Rai is completely overwhelmed when he sees this, because he considers it an overpowered effect. Being the first player in the world to acquire a unique title, he is given a bonus where he can choose a subclass. Rai considers this generosity because he is not supposed to get this option so early in the game. The option soon pops up asking him if he would choose his subclass, and Rai excitedly says yes. The system then informs him that once a subclass is chosen, it cannot be changed. Rai finds himself in the levitating space too. Choose his class, and without hesitation, he picks a subclass known as Soul Smith. Rai smiles after he is granted the class, because he believes that he is about to make a fortune. After this, he notices that there are 2 drops, which is a dagger and a key. The girl recognizes the key, saying it is the sewer key, which lets one access a hunting ground where one can easily level up and earn a ton of rewards. The dude confirms this, saying their dead team leader mentioned it. Apparently, the dead guy was aiming for the key from the start. Rai grabs the key, and while spinning it around, he tells the 2 that the key is not a rare item, because the scorching goat has a 1% drop rate for it. The girl and the dude cannot believe that Rai is treating such a rare item very casually. And this tells them that Rai is on a completely different level. Rai then grabs the dagger, saying it is called the goat's dagger, which he actually considers a decent drop. Rai walks over to a boulder to try out the dagger, and without putting too much effort, he slashes the boulder. The surviving idiots are shocked to see this, because this means the dagger is extraordinarily sharp for it to have cut the boulder so easily. Even though the 2 are blown away, Rai still believes the dagger is not enough, and he hopes he can find the right materials. Moving on to the subclass, he knows that for others this is a side thing. But for him, he considers it his main class. Basically, most subasses are useless. But rare subasses can have broken abilities, and Soul Smith is one of the best. This is a subclass that allows the user to extract soul fragments from everything like humans, animals, plants, and even minerals. These fragments can be used to create and enhance anything. It turns out that this is the only subclass that actually gives a chance to clear the game. Rai then activates a skill called the Soul Vision, which allows for the awakening of items. Rai uses this skill on the dagger, and he realizes that the required material is a Type F Mage's Soul Fragment. Since he needs a mage for this, he figures out that the surviving girl, Rumto, can come in. Rai uses the skill to assess her status, and he realizes that he can extract her soul fragment, but there is a condition to this, and this is the fact that he has to form a contract with her. In addition, Rai is informed that there will be no side effects during extraction. Rai is a bit taken back, because he didn't know he would need a contract before setting up the 90% profit-sharing deal. However, he is thankful that he found something useful. Rai then asks Rumi if she is interested in using the key to level up. Rumi and the dude are excited to hear this because it is a great opportunity. But Rai whips out a contract telling them that any drop items listed on the note are his. He says he would count these toward their profit contributions. Without hesitation, the 2 accept this because they believe the key will provide a way for them to survive, even though they will be donating 90% of their earnings. Rai simply tells the 2 that they don't have to thank him because the more they earn, the more profit he gets. With this, the contract with Rumi is established, thus setting the extraction condition for the soul fragment. In no time, Rumi's soul fragment is obtained, and since Rai has gotten the material he needs, he figures out that it is time to complete what he started. Rai activates the Soul SM Myth skill and then awakens the goat's dagger. The dagger goes through a short process of awakening, and Rai gets the information that the dagger's awakening is successful. Thanks to this awakening, the dagger's attack power has increased, and the skill called Soul Slash is now usable. Rumi and her colleague are confused about what this means. And Rai shows them an example by swinging the dagger, unleashing a massive, invincible power that hits the wall behind them, shattering everything to create a space to the outside. Rumi and her colleague fall to the ground in shock, wondering how a human like them is able to produce such immense power. Ray, on the other hand, is not completely moved because he thinks the dagger is still the bare minimum. In addition to this, he has a bunch of lowly skills at his disposal, leaving him to wonder what is next on his list. Suddenly, Rumi sees Rai staring at her, and this unleashes an overwhelming aura that scares the life out of her. She holds her head in fear, believing that Rai is going to kill her, but Rai just runs past her. He walks over to the bodies and starts performing rites for the dead, shocking Rumi. After he is done, Rai finds a wallet filled with money, and his face lights up in excitement because he believes that this will cover his cab fare. At this point, Rum and her colleague have come to the conclusion that Ray is even more dangerous than the scorching goat because he lacks morals. Later on, Ray heads to the outskirts of Kamori because there is a hidden dungeon deep underground, which is perfect for farming experience points. The monsters in the dungeon are tough, and on a normal day, one would need a party of 3 or more to challenge the dungeon. However, with the goat's dagger in his hands, Ray believes that he has what it takes to take on the dungeon. In fact, he plans to take all of the experience points for himself, just as he climbs down the dungeon. A coin comes flying at him, but he easily cuts down the coin and he immediately prepares for combat. It turns out that there are 3 dudes, Kuki, Adrian, and Ian. Kuki smiles evilly at Rai, telling him that he has just entered their turf and it is out of bounds. Ray points his dagger at the dude, asking him who decided that it is his turf. Kuki mentions that the rule in the game was first come, first served. Rai then tells them that he is willing to tell them a better hunting ground for a good price, since they are 3. Ian replies to the guy, telling him that they don't need his help because they are fine right where they are. Adrian tells Rai that they are even ready to let him stay in the dungeon if he pays. Rai immediately realizes that the trio knows how to do business. He then asks them how much they want, and Cookie replies that they want 50,000 yen per hour. Cookie claims that he can make this back by taking down the monsters in the dungeon. Without argument, Rai agrees to the deal and he pays up the 50,000 yen. Cookie collects the money, telling Rai that he now has exactly 1 hour from when he paid the money. Moments later, Ray makes his way to the wolf's cave, and as he steps in, he finds himself surrounded by a pack of dire wolves. The wolves are aggressive, but Rai knows that they are a mid-tier monster that is easy to farm for a good profit. In fact, this is the only place that they appear in packs. Even though Rai can use the soul slash to take out the wolves in an instant, he decides to save it in the meantime. Just then, the wolves make their move and lunge at Rai. But with quick movement, Ray cuts them into pieces. After taking out the entire pack, Ray whips out a packet of straight tea so he can relieve his thirst. Suddenly, Adrian attacks him from behind, but Ray's quick reflexes allow him to dodge the strike. And he manages to block the dude's knuckle attack with his dagger. However, he loses his straight tea in the process. And Ray swings his dagger in a counter, almost decapitating the dude. This leaves a small cut on his head, and Adrian admits that Ray's attack was a close one. Because the dude was able to dodge the strike, Rai easily figures out that he is used to fighting. Ray then berates Adrian, telling him that he and his guys really like ambushes because they came right after he just finished fighting monsters. Ray mentions their tactics, saying he knows all about it. And the other 2 finally step out, saying Rai must have noticed right from the start. Rai replies that he is aware of all of these because places like these are where scavengers like them like to stay. In addition, he found it suspicious that they were the only ones there. Rai then tells Kuki that he should have planted a decoy party if he really wanted to fool him. Kuki is pissed when he hears this. And deep down, Rai had already noticed everything the moment he saw their weapons. Adrian has knuckle guards on, and the rocket punch knuckle is basically a reckless super acceleration attack. Ian's sword, on the other hand, uses high-frequency vibrations to create strong cutting power for a short time. Rai knows that if he didn't know this, one hit would have sent him straight to his ancestors. And Cookie, the leader, his ring, is actually a troublesome piece of equipment. Cookie then tries to play cool, apologizing for sneaking up on Rai. He then suggests that they settle it with some hush money. He scatters a bunch of coins on the ground, and Rai is pissed that the dude is wasting money, which would amount to at least 10,000 yen. Cookie smiles at Rai, claiming that his hand slipped and asks if he can pick it up for him. Since Rai is not a fool, he knows that the whole thing is a trap. And he asks the dude if this is how he hands over hush money to someone, telling them to kneel to take it. It turns out that the ring he is wearing is an item that triggers a small explosion centered on a coin. Rai easily figures out that the dude is underestimating him because he thinks he doesn't know. Rai then tells the group that if they try to take down a prey stronger than them, they won't make it back alive. Cookie and his friends get into a combat position, and Cookie tells Rai that he talks a lot even though he is greatly outnumbered. Rai then confidently tells the trio that he doesn't care how many weaklings they are because if they count them, they are not worth a single yen. Cookie is pissed when he hears this, and he activates the coins to blow them up. Adrian also charges in telling Rai that he had plans to kill him quickly before, but he has changed his mind. He promises to tear Rai limb from limb and inflict so much pain on him till he dies. Adrian is the first to reach Rai, and he throws a powerful punch at him, but Rai dodges the punch. The punch shatters the ground, and while Rai is still trying to balance himself, Ian appears behind him, ready to cut off his head. Rai is able to turn around in time to block the strike. But this immediately puts him between the two dudes, even with the two jumping him at the same time. Rai is able to push them back, and he reminds them that he paid 50,000 yen for the space, but they have broken the contract. With a stern face and voice, Rai tells them that he will be taking back his 50,000 yen with interest. Cookie confidently tells Rai that he would pay the interest with exploding coins as he prepares to launch a full-on assault on Rai. Cookie then activates a coin explosion that sends flying coins at Rai, forcing him to run. While he is on the run, Ian leaps at him, ready to cut him down. But Rai blocks the strike. Surprisingly, this shatters Ian's sword. And while he is still watching in shock, Rai almost cuts his head off. At this point, Cookie starts to figure out that Rai's dagger might be an epic item. But at the same time, he doesn't think he and his guys are going to lose to Rai. The dude sends another wave of coins at Rai, forcing Rai to run around the room. Rai is pissed that Cookie is busy wasting coins, and suddenly, Adrian appears behind Rai, ready to punch his head off. The attack appears to land, leaving catastrophic damage to the ground. A crater is left on the ground, and Rai's dagger flies into the air. Adrian raises his hand in celebration, saying he felt the hit, and he is pretty sure that Rai is already dead, while Adrian is busy celebrating. Ian is pissed that Rai broke his sword, leaving him to ask if there is a way to fix his sword. Cookie boasts that no matter how great the weapon is, if the user is just a regular human, it is useless. Cookie bends to take Rai's dagger, and he tells the team that it is time to collect the spoils of battle. Out of nowhere, Ian and Adrian get hit with the soulbending skill that generates chains that lift them up and restrain them. Adrian and Ian scream in pain, while Cookie watches in confusion. From behind, Rai's voice emerges, talking about how he used the power of a soul smith that directly tightened the soul. With a mocking voice, Rai says he knows that the pain must be worse than dying. Rai finally appears, and Cookie angrily dashes toward him. But Rai easily blocks the dude, telling him that he is too slow. However, Cookie argues that he is not slow as he unleashes a ton of coins from his body, ready to blow Rai away with them. Before the coins can activate, Rai activates the soulbending skill to restrain Cookie. Cookie screams out in pain, demanding to know why his coin explosion didn't activate. Rai tells him that soulbending can seal an enemy's skills, and if there is a level difference. Rai says it is basically easier than twisting a baby's hand. Cookie yells at Rai, demanding to know what trash level difference he is talking about because he is level 7, and he has been raising his level as fast as possible. After hearing this, Rai tells Cookie that he has done pretty well for a beginner, but he tightens the restraints more. Since he now has control of the situation, Rai suggests that they start their negotiations Arash. In fact, he plans to extract a fragment of the soul while they are at it. He checks out Adrian's fragment, which is a warrior's soul. And the condition to get this is to feed him until he is full. Ian, he is a swordsman, and he can extract his soul fragment if he meets his sister. As for Cookie, he is a mage, and to extract his soul fragment, Rai has to terrify him so much that he thinks he is going to die. When Rai sees this, he realizes that he can immediately extract Cookie's fragment right there. Rai then tightens the chain around his neck, causing him so much pain that he starts begging Rai not to kill him. Rai replies that he is saying trash because he actually needs him alive. Ray whips out his dagger, and this scares Cookie, who asks Ray what he means by this. Ray starts talking about his eyes, his blood, his organs, saying there are people all over the world who would buy everything he just listed. Looking like a villain, Rai tells Cookie that the 50,000 yen interest is pretty high. With fear in his voice, Ian asks Cookie if he thinks Rai would really do what he is threatening to do. Deep down, Rai is not even ready to go through the trouble of doing this because he believes that it is not worth the trouble. In addition, he can't believe that the dudes are so dumb that they believe a part-timer like him would have an organ trading route. However, when Rai speaks, he acts tough, telling Cookie to think of a way that makes more money than selling organs if he wants to live. Cookie then replies that he can't suddenly think of this, and he starts begging Rai, telling him that he would do anything. Tears of fear fall from his eyes as he begs Rai to spare his life, and as the tears touch the ground, it meets the condition to make Cookie fear Rai from the bottom of his heart. Rai then extracts his soul fragment, and after this, he releases the trio from the soul-binding chains. The trio crashes to the ground in pain, and Rai whips out contracts for them to sign. When the trio checks out the contract, they can't believe that Rai is demanding 90% of their income, with a clause that they will always obey him. Rai simply overwhelms them with his scary aura, asking them if they have any complaints about this. The trio quickly replies that they have no complaint at all. And Rai commends them, saying that they are now his cash cows. Rai tells them that if they show any sign of rebellion whatsoever, the operating table will become their grave. Rai then adds that he would like them to take him to the person backing them. Cookie is shocked to hear this, and he asks Rai how he knows. Rai replies that their equipment isn't something that weaklings can prepare on their own, and because of this, he is pretty sure that someone is pulling the strings behind the scenes. Realizing that Rai is onto them, Cookie falls to his knees, begging him not to allow him to take this route, because if it gets out that he sided with someone else aside from his boss, he is going to get killed. Rai kicks the dude in the face, asking him what is scarier, his boss or an organ transplant with no anesthesia. Ian stands up and runs off, saying he doesn't even want any. Rai simply grabs the guy with the soul-bending restriction, telling him that he cannot escape. Seeing their friend raised high in the air with the possibility of death, Cookie and Adrian immediately agree to cooperate. Rai then tells them that he is going to confiscate all of their weapons and money. It turns out that Rai is pretty confident that no one can hurt him now. And his confidence is right to have, because he is currently a level 36 player with impressive stats to boot. Elsewhere in a circus, a dude Roku is seen beating up another guy, while there are a bunch of other guys stuck in a cell. Roku looks absolutely thrilled while beating up the innocent guy, claiming that he is useless. One of the dudes in the cell screams at Roku, telling him to stop beating up the dude, because he might as well die if he continues that way. Roku replies that the dude is free to die, because they are all useless idiots who have been holding the boss back. Just then, the boss appears from behind the curtain with a clown painting on his face. He asks Roku if he has done training the dude, and when he walks over to the dude, the boss claims Roku has gone too far. He tells Roku that there might be after effects if he breaks the guy's bones. The boss comforts the dude, telling Roku that the guild is already short on manpower. And even though the dude is useless, the boss doesn't think Roku is allowed to break him. While the boss is saying this, Roku watches in shock, wondering if he heard right. Roku then apologizes, and the dude who is getting beaten up thanks the boss, saying he will do the task properly next time. Suddenly, the boss brings out a whip and hits the dude with it. He smacks him on the mouth while telling Roku that this is how he is supposed to train animals. The boss claims that the whip is very effective because the flesh may tear, but the bones will definitely not break. The boss is in the middle of beating up the dude when Cookie and his friends show up, telling the boss that they have returned. The boss immediately notices that something is wrong because the trio is not supposed to be back that fast. Cookie then struggles to talk as he tells the boss that they are in a bad state and continuing the mission will be difficult. While he is busy explaining himself, the boss notices that he is not wearing his ring, and he immediately asks him where the ring is because he deems the ring more valuable than his life. At this point, Cookie starts to crap himself, and he explains to his boss that the ring was taken by a monster who is ridiculously strong. The boss is not ready to hear his excuses, and he hits him with the whip, screaming at him for being an idiot. The boss is frustrated that he has a bunch of useless trash working for him when they are supposed to be pushing really hard. Even though Adrian and Co. can't say it, they know everyone is quitting because of his power harassment. The boss then tells Roku to bring out his favorite pet, Johnny. Moments later, a scary white tiger, Johnny, steps into the room and walks over to where Cookie is. This is when Cookie realizes that he is about to die. And he starts screaming, asking the boss if he is seriously trying to kill him, even though he has always been loyal to his orders. The boss ignores his plight and tells Joni to enjoy a nice fresh dinner. The tiger leaps at Cookie, ready to tear him apart, but Ray appears on the scene and kicks the tiger so hard that it passes out. Cookie crawls on the ground, trying to get to safety, while the boss watches his tiger roll into the distance. Rai then tells the boss that he is not ready to stand around and watch the dude kill his precious cash cow. Cookie lets off a bright smile when he realizes that Rai has arrived on the scene and he is somewhat safe already. The boss runs over to check on his terrified tiger and he pets it. The trio then quickly meets up with Ray, telling him that he showed up so late because Cookie was about to become tiger food. While Ray is busy discussing with the trio, the boss hurls his whip at him, but this is nothing to Rai as his reflexes kick into action and he cuts the whip into tiny bits, shocking the boss. He immediately demands to know who Ray is, and Ray replies that he is the trio's new employer. Roku screams out in anger when he hears this, asking the trio if they have forgotten the favor that the boss did for them. Cookie replies telling Roku that he doesn't owe the stupid boss anything. Ian agrees with Cookie, saying he was only following the boss because he was scared, but he has met someone scarier than him. Rai then turns to the dude who just finished receiving a beating, telling him that if he signs a contract with him, he is going to protect him from his clown boss. The dude is shocked to hear that they have an option to escape the hellhole they have been living in. Rai assures the dude and those in the cage that he can free them, but all they have to do is give him half of their earnings. In addition to this, he is going to give them info on how they can clear the game instead of staying in a trash circus. When Cookie and his friends hear this, they start protesting, reminding Rai that he is taking 90% from them. Rai simply replies that he is taking 90% because they tried to kill him. The boss soon loses his cool, saying, Rai beat up his tiger, and he is also trying to steal his subordinates. Annoyed, he promises to kill them all and send them straight to hell. Rai teases the dude, telling him that he is in Japan and such barbaric behavior is not allowed. The clown then replies that whatever he does is allowed as long as he has the golden card with him. He whips out a golden card, which is a guild operation permit, giving the clown Andrei Lukács the right to be a guild master. Apparently, the permit is granted by the Ministry of Internal Affairs and Communications. the Player Association Management Bureau, and director Kenzo Yamo. When Rei sees this, he immediately figures out that the Japanese government is desperate after seeing what happened in Moscow. Andre mentions that he has been given the Guildmaster authority that surpasses the law just so he can clear dungeons. In fact, as long as he has the cards, even the police can't mess with him. Andre tells Rai that power holds everything. And as it stands, he can kill Rai without any consequences. Rai cannot believe that a lot has happened while he was dungeon diving. Rai then whips out his dagger, asking Andre if he would be able to do shady business just like him once he becomes a guild master. Andre collects his gun from Roku, telling Rai that he is a fool because to become a guild master, he needs to be recognized as player rank B or higher. However, Andre believes that Rai doesn't have to know this since he is about to die. He aims his gun at Rai and fires off like a maniac, ready to put several holes in Rai's body. As the bullet approaches Rai, he activates a unique skill, the Soul Barrier. This is a skill that can only be activated by level 25 players and above, and a mage's soul fragment is needed. The barrier immediately comes up, and when Rai sees it, he realizes that he is in a big mess. Apparently, Russia used nuclear missiles in Moscow's ice trial, but they still couldn't clear it. And Rai asks Andre if he knows why so many players don't use guns to clear dungeons. While saying this, Rai keeps moving toward Andre with the barrier. Andre panics, screaming at Rai to stay away from him while firing his gun in desperation, hoping that it will crack the barrier. Before he knows it, the barrier pins him to the wall, forcing him to drop the gun in his hand. Andre struggles to breathe while the barrier pins him tightly to the wall, and Rai only lets him go when he has almost crushed all of his internal organs. By the time the barrier is taken down, Andre is already coughing up blood and he crashes to the ground while Rai lets him know that guns cannot clear dungeons because skills will always surpass weapons. When the dudes in the cell see this, they are all left in shock since they don't expect their leader to be taken down so easily. Rai then asks them for the final time if they are going to contract with him or not. Rai lets them know that as a bonus for forming a contract with him, he will allow them to do whatever they like to Andre. The moment they hear this, they get even more interested and agitated because they have a lot of grudges against Andre that they need to settle. Andre then tells Rai that whatever he is doing is illegal. But Roku urges him to calm down. Rai then replies that he doesn't really care while reminding him that he was the one shouting power is everything some moments ago. Before the clown knows it, all the others have been set free, and he watches as they stand tall above him, ready to beat him to a pulp. Rai, on the other hand, is glad that he has managed to gather a lot of cash cows. He decides that he is just going to continue making easy money off of them. He then decides not to do anything yet until more impatient people show up for the trial. At this point, the trial is about 1 month left, and Rai believes that he is still on track. Sometime later, Rai decides to visit the Player Association headquarters, the Rank Certification Examination Hall. On his way to the headquarters, he hears some guys discussing the latest news. Apparently, if a player is ranked B or higher, they can get scouts from famous guilds for a high salary. In fact, there is a saying that they are going to get an annual income of several million yen. One of them then mentions that only 1% of players in the country are ranked B, and only 9 people in Japan are ranked A apparently. It has now been 2 weeks since the game became reality, and many people have tried to earn the initial price of 100 million yen set by the Japanese government. But the result was catastrophic. This was when the Player Association made membership mandatory, and one can't challenge the trials or get rewards unless they join the association. Because of the interests available for this, Rai wants to be a part of it. Meanwhile, someone strange is watching Rai from above, and Rai soon gets the feeling that something is wrong. Suddenly, a signpole falls from above, which is aimed directly at Rai, but he dodges it. Everyone is shocked to see this, and suddenly, an annoying voice calls out Rai's name. This annoying voice turns out to be Tao, the lone shark dude. He jumps down to challenge Rai, asking him if he believes he has escaped the debts. Rai then asks Tao if he is there to take the rank certification test, too. Rai then reminds the dude that he was defeated with one punch from the fist of the beginner last time, and trying to take the test would be a total waste of time. Taku confidently tells Rai not to think of him as the same person he was, because he is now the strongest profession spearman. Ray laughs out loud when he hears this, telling TQO that he chose a profession that is usually picked by amateurs who don't know anything. Ray tells Taco that the profession is strong at first, but in later stages, it becomes a burden because it can't keep up with inflation. Taco is pissed to hear the mockery, and he asks Ray about his own profession. Rai replies that he is just a beginner, and Taco almost dies of laughter when he hears this. Taco tells Rai that he is practically jobless, and Ray assures him that he is not lying about being a beginner. Taco then decides to punish Rai for the last time. He pulls out the signpole and hurls it at Rai using his spearman power. Surprisingly, Ray didn't even sweat before dodging the attack. And before Chilyu knows it, Ray appears in front of him. Even though Rai has no intention of causing trouble before the exam, he cannot wait around because Tikilo actually attacked first. Without putting too much effort into his strike, Rai sends Tikilo flying into the distance, embarrassing him in front of everyone. To Ray, he is not concerned because he acted in self-defense. He then makes his way into the headquarters, where he learns that the rank certification exam fee is 8,000 yen. Rai pays the money, and after a while, an attendant shows up telling him that it is time for his rank certification exam. The attendant takes Rai into a room that houses a giant purple crystal. Rai is expected to put his hands on the crystal, and without wasting time, Ray stretches his hand to the crystal. As he gets closer, an electrical signal interacts with the touch, and this lets off a bright white light that shocks the attendant with Rai. She is left wondering what is going on in front of her. When they return to the office, the attendant frantically tells him that the test shows that his rank is equivalent to a rank. The attendant then tells Rai that players can change jobs to various professions like swordmaster, archbishop, and magic master. She lets him know that if he wants to change his profession, the association will fully support him. However, Ray doesn't even think about it twice before declining the offer, because the profession he actually wants has not been unlocked yet. The attendant is curious, and she asks Rai which profession it is, and Ray replies that he has no intention of telling her. Usually a special item is required to change jobs, and it is surprising that the association is saying that they are going to prepare the set items. However, Ray is not concerned because he can gather items himself. The attendant then asks Rai if he is sure about his option, and Rai says yes. The girl is surprised by this, and she asks Rai if his decision will not be a bit problematic for him. Rai asks why she says this, and the girl reveals that Ray's power surpasses any A-rank player that they have confirmed so far. Apparently, if he refuses to change jobs, he will be ranked E according to international standards. E rank is basically for beginners. And beginners sure have restrictions like not being able to create a guild. The attendant tells Rai that his decision is going to be disadvantageous to him. And Rai simply replies that the government sure likes making pointless rules, since there is a restriction on guild creation. Rai thinks of having someone from his money-making army level up to B rank, and then make them the guild master. However, he is not ready to change professions because as far as he knows, the only profession that can clear the final trial of prophecy online is just one. Rai then asks the attendant if he is entitled to the 100 million yen for clearing the trial, even if he is rank. The attendant says yes. But before she can say something else, Rai tells her that he doesn't really care. The attendant then decides to back down, while telling him that his registration has been issued as E-rank. Upon stepping outside the headquarters, Ray sees several guild representatives standing outside trying to recruit players. 2 reps soon approach him, and they let him know that they are recruiting from Dank and higher. Rai simply answers that he is E-rank, and the two immediately back off. It then dawns on Rai that E-ranks are treated like lepers. This basically doesn't concern Rai because he doesn't even have the intention to follow others, so he doesn't care. Meanwhile, he is being watched by a certain strange representative who seems to know what he is capable of. Without wasting time, the rep walks up to Ray to introduce himself. He reveals that he is from the Guild Genesis Wings, and his name is Sato Shinji. Those who are around hear the name and immediately figure out that Sato is the same person as Foder. Rai becomes interested in why they are calling him Foder. Sato then reveals that Foder is his handle name from when he used to play pro online. When Ray hears this, he realizes that he might be dealing with a famous person, and it might be nice for him to stay friendly for money-making purposes. Rai then asks Sato what he wants from him, and suddenly Tako appears out of nowhere, saying he is the person Genesis Wings Guild has been looking for. Tako starts saying trash like how expensive he is, because he is B-rank, and Ray cannot believe that a weak dude like Takuo is B-rank. Saito tries to act cool, asking Takuo who he is, while making sure he avoids trouble. Believing that Saito is weak, Takuo oversteps his boundary, and he grabs the dude's tie asking if he should show him how strong he is. Saito soon gets tired of his shenanigans, and he tackles Tako to the ground. Saito's playful and gentle face immediately transforms into something dangerous as he tells Tako that he is busy having fun while the time of destruction is drawing near. Saito finally lets the dude go, telling him that he doesn't have time for him. Tako leaves embarrassed, yet again, and Saito apologizes for the disturbance. However, Ray is not pissed because he knows how annoying Tako is. The two then head to a cafe to talk, and Ray asks Saito why he is meeting with an E-rank like him. Saito urges Rai to stop being modest, because he is only an E-rank because he refused to change jobs. When Rai hears this, he realizes that Saito got the information from the player association because it is personal information. Saito reveals that his guild is cooperating with the association in several activities, because Japan's destruction is imminent and they cannot afford to be picky. However, he lets Ray know that this whole thing is quite expensive. Saito tells Rai that if he joins Genesis Wings, they are going to pay him the same amount as the information fee that they paid to the association. When Ray sees the amount, which is 10 million yen, he almost suffers a brain freeze. At the same time, he realizes that this type of money might have moved his previous self, but not someone like his present self. Rai then replies to the dude, telling him that he has no intention of joining a guild. When Kato hears this, he figures out that such a small amount won't move Ray because of the type of person he is. Saito then tells Rai that they can share the information that they have gathered with him because the guild is cooperating with government agencies and overseas guilds to create the world's best wiki. He mentions that this requires special conditions for access, but he assures him that they are going to offer him top-level authority. After hearing everything Saito has to say, Ray asks him if they have any data on players who have cleared the game. Saito laughs when he hears this, saying no one has been able to clear the game. This only pisses Ray off, and an overwhelming aura leaks from his body before telling Saito that he is not interested. Fear grips Saito, and he trembles as he passes his contact card to Rai, telling him to contact him if he ever changes his mind. He adds that their drinking bills will be on him, and he quickly walks off to pay the bills. On his way to the counter, Saito realizes that he gave in so easily because he was scared. He realizes that all of his instincts were screaming at him not to anger Rai, because he is a freaking monster. Suddenly, Ray taps him from behind, and Saito's soul almost leaves his body. Rai then gives him his contact information, telling him that he is free to contact him if he needs help, while adding that he might accept depending on the amount being offered. Saito takes the contact info and thanks Rai for it. But as Ray leaves, Saito is left wondering what sort of monster he is. Not long after this, Saito returns to the Genesis Wings headquarters and heads to the Guildum's office. The guildmaster, Tsukino Yamagata, who is a red-headed lady, welcomes him back, asking him how his meeting with the supposed strongest went. Saito has no choice but to tell the guildmaster that Rei is truly a monster. In fact, Saito lets her know that Rei is the first person to scare him just by talking to him. The guildmaster hears this and decides to unleash her aura, asking Saito, who seems stronger between her and Rei. Saito starts to stutter, and when the guildmaster sees how much Saito is hesitating to answer the question, she has her answer. Saito then apologizes for this conduct, but the guildmaster lets him know that there is no need to apologize because it is his job to convey the information that he has gathered with his own eyes without hiding anything. The guildmaster also adds that she is at the bottom among the 10 transcendents, and it is not a surprise that there are people who are stronger than her. When talking about the 10 transcendents, they are considered the top 10 players in the prophecy online who received the bounty after being in a world where the game has become a reality. Basically, the transcendents are strong individuals who possess immense power. In fact, their existence can influence the power balance between nations. And since Saito came back alone, it tells Tsukino that Rei rejected the invitation. Saito mentions that Rai doesn't seem interested in the information that Genesis Wings provides. Tsukino then says that if Rei is one of the transcendents, he would have no need for money and fame because he already has this. Tsukino then says she doesn't think there is a way one of the 10 transcendents would remain a beginner. She believes that there are players who gain their powers by using dark items that increase stats in exchange for severe side effects. Tsukino then tells Saito that she really trusts his discerning eyes. And if what he says is true, then Rei is truly the strongest in the world. Apparently, there is only one name that is missing from the 10 transcendents, and this is the number 1. It turns out that the United States used electronic espionage networks to pinpoint the whereabouts of 9 of the 10 transcendents. But the data on the number 1 is corrupt, which is why the name is unknown. However, there have been reports that the US is lying about the data being corrupted because they are hiding the last person. Saito lets Tsukino know that he didn't believe this rumor until he saw Rei. However, after meeting Rei, he is convinced that he might be the last one. Tsukino then says, judging by Saito's report, the report of Rei being the last person is pretty high. Tsukino then tells Saito to notify the guild members, telling them that from that moment onward, all hostile actions toward Rei have been banned. Tsukino considers Rei a ticking nuclear bomb that must be handled carefully. A few weeks after this, Rei rented an office in a shared building, which is basically the hideout for the money-making gang. The entire gang comes together to work on the new office to make sure it is well furnished. Kuki also shows up, telling Rei that he has gathered the day's tribute. Rei checks out the money, and he admits that it is pretty good. He then asks Kuki how the party strengthening is going. And Kuki assures Rei that everything is progressing just as he wants it. He mentions that leveling using the underground waterway key is going smoothly, and he makes 1 million a day. In fact, the newbies are earning at least $100,000 a day. And Kuki thanks Rei for the help so far, because he didn't know they could earn this amount of money. Rei smiles, reminding Kuki that he already told him that he would make him earn because the more they earn, the more profit he makes. Rei then tells Kuki that the tribute is for the information fees. Deep down, Kuki admits that the fees are high. But at the same time, he believes that it is worth it because Rei has a lot of information to boot. Kuki then reminds Rei that the Earth trial will end in 10 days, asking Rei what he plans to do. He adds that the prize money has gone up to 400 million, and Rei replies that he would like to wait a bit longer. Just then, the news comes on showing a live report of where the Earth trial is currently being challenged. However, the situation doesn't seem to be progressing. And if it continues this way, it is evident that Japan is done for. Suddenly, the reporter receives a new update from the government, saying they have raised the reward for the trial to 1 billion yen. The The reporter believes that the government has run out of options, and they can only pray that a capable player shows up to clear the trial. When Rai sees this, he figures out that foreign guilds might start coming in if they delay the whole thing any longer. Rai picks up his shirt and decides that it is time he tackles the situation. Kuki is shocked to see Rai leaving to clear the trial alone. Rai tells Kuki that he is offering to go alone because he can't put his money-making gang in danger. The gang hears this and starts blushing. But Rai wastes no time shattering their hearts by reminding them that the prize money is 1 billion yen, which means he gets to keep everything if he clears the dungeon alone. Shortly afterward, Rai arrives at the dungeon where the trial is being held. He finds Sato, who is happy to see him, and Rai quickly makes it clear that he is not there to cooperate with his guild. Sato immediately tells him that he actually brought a profitable proposition, and Rai being the businessman, he asks what the proposition is. Sato tells Rai that he has requested to transport cargo for 100 million yen. Rai is surprised to hear this, and he asks Sato what exactly he is supposed to be transporting. Sato points to a backpack, telling him that he wants him to deliver the backpack to one of their members who is inside. Rai cannot believe that he is delivering a backpack for 100 million yen, and he demands to know what is inside. Sato replies that what is inside the bag is food. Rai checks it himself, and he realizes that Sato is not lying. Rai notices a unique chocolate bar inside the bag, and Rai asks what it is. Sato replies that the chocolate is Tsukino's favorite treat. After this, Sato explains to Rai that their team is at the entrance of the 5th floor. Sato mentions that the clearing has taken too long, and because of this, the team has run out of food. Rai then asks Sato if there is some hidden agenda whatsoever, because if they are offering 100 million yen to deliver a backpack, a lot of people would be willing to take the job. Sato then replies that he would have liked to say the guild is a generous guild, but this would be a lie. Sato admits that they are currently in a bind. Apparently, they have asked 39 different parties to take the transport mission, and all of them ended in annihilation. Rai is confused by what he means by annihilation because the first 4 floors of the Earth trial should have been a formality. This leaves Rai wondering if the game and reality are different. The moment he says this, Sato confirms the fact that Rai actually knows something. Sato then tells Rai that as far as they know, the maz's mechanics are the same as in the game. However, almost no party has made it to the 5th floor, and the ones that have made it there are currently waiting for supplies. Saito then glazes Rai, saying he and Tsukuno are the only ones who can consider the first 4 floors of formality. Rai picks up the backpack, wondering if they really have a shortage in manpower. But at the same time, he can't complain because he is going to make his money. Rai then asks Sato if there is going to be additional compensation if he manages to deliver the backpack quickly. Sato cannot answer this, and he steps away to check with the higher-ups first. While Sato is busy making calls, Rai is thinking of how to make more money from the guild. Saito soon returns telling Rai that he has been promised an additional 50 million yen if he can deliver it in a day. Rai is glad to hear this, and he realizes that it was wise of him to have asked. Rai smiles ear to ear because he plans to deliver the backpack in an hour, not a day. Moments later, 2 players are seen struggling on the 3rd floor, and just as it seems all hope is lost, Rai passes by the 3rd floor and slashes the monster into tiny bits like it is nothing, while he simply continues his journey. The 2 adventurers are shocked to see that someone just saved them. But before they can properly thank him, he has dashed off into the distance. In no time, Rai reaches the 5th floor, and when he checks his time, he realizes that he only used 42 minutes to get there, which means he made 150 million yen in less than an hour. Suddenly, a player shows up asking Rai if he is the Rai they have been waiting for. Rai also asks the dude if he is from Genesis Wings, and the dude confirms this. Rai then asks him for the person in charge, because he has brought the food entrusted to him by Saito. Since he has done his side of the bargain, Rai suggests that they pay him immediately. Just then, the dude tells him that he is the one in charge, and the moment he left outside, the payment was already transferred to him. Apparently, the money was already sent to him because Sito assured them that Ray can't fail. Rai then whips out his phone, and he realizes that they have truly sent the money. Rai confirms the transfer and thanks the dude. The dude immediately calls out his colleagues, telling them that food has arrived. Everyone rushes to the food, talking about how they have been saved, because they already believe that they were done for. It also turns out that the party has a lot of people, and suddenly, a bunch of dudes rush over to them. They believe that they have managed to make it to safety, and one person asks them what it is that they are running from. Suddenly, a loud noise hits the area, and before they know it, a swarm of insect monsters appears in the distance. Ray is still preparing to engage when a cloud of fire appears from behind and burns away all of the monsters. Ray is shocked when he sees this, and when he looks around, he sees that Tsukino is the one who just unleashed the attack. Apparently, this is an advanced skill of the Elemental Blader class called Hellfire Slash. Rai is impressed to see that there are still some people who can actually fight back. After wiping out the monsters, Tsukino walks up to Ray, thanking him for accepting the transport mission. With a bright smile on her face, she introduces herself and reveals her excitement to work with Rai. Tsukino initially looks like a fearsome tiger with her aura leaking everywhere as she approaches Ray, but she trips and soon finds herself in an aura debt. Ray manages to catch her before she hits the ground, and she blames this on the fact that she hasn't eaten in 3 days. Rai then tells Tsukino that he heard that she and her party are having trouble with supplies. In the background, the rest of the group is already fighting for the food that Rai just brought, which proves his point. Later on, Ray and Tsukino sit down to talk, and Ray asks Tsukino if she is the strongest among the party, and she confirms this. However, she confesses that she is the least among the 10 transcendents. When Ray hears this, he just mocks the name, saying it is such a cringeworthy name. Tsukino gets off her seat, saying she also doesn't want to be called that. But back in the day, they usually called the top players in the game the Transcendents. When Ray hears that they are the top 10 in strength, he asks her who determined the strength, and Tsukino mentions that it was revealed by an investigation from a U.S. intelligence agency. However, there is one person still missing on the list, and this is the number 1 player. Apparently, all 10 received a reward from the game's operation, and Tsukino asks Ray if he got one. Ray is confused by this, and he asks Tsukino how much the reward was. Tsukino replies that the reward depends on the country, but in Japan, it was 1 million yen. When Rai hears this, he realizes that it was the 1 million yen that he got, which got him hooked on the game and nearly turned him into a roadside pauper. Nonetheless, Rai decides that it would be better to keep quiet if he is really the number 1 player. He knows that he is going to have a hard time moving around if this information gets out. Rai finally speaks out, saying the reward is pretty small compared to dungeon clearing rewards. Tsukino admits that the reward is small when looked at from a money perspective, but the knowledge gained from the game was far more valuable than the reward. However, even their experiences didn't work on all the bosses in the dungeon. And Ray is surprised that even the top 10 players couldn't clear the Earth trial. Tsukino replies that no matter how skilled they are still mere humans. And if only they had the level and equipment from the game, they might have been able to somehow crack it. However, she believes that clearing the dungeon in the current state is impossible. Rai then stands up, reminding Tsukino that his mission is done. He urges her to tell him if anything else comes up, and he might consider taking it up depending on the reward. Rai then prepares to leave the tent with the intention of taking down the boss on floor 5 so he can get the 1 billion yen reward. Suddenly, Tsukino screams at him, telling him to stop. She asks him if he would like to cooperate in taking down the boss on the floor. Tsukino's subordinates are shocked to hear this, and they tell Tsukino that they can handle the boss themselves. They all believe that Rei's intentions are clear, and they cannot trust him. Tsukino immediately reminds the group that she already banned all forms of hostility toward Rei. Tsukino assures her subordinates that she understands how they feel. But she lets them know that she is not ready to lose any more comrades. Apparently, the group has been through a lot, and they have lost a lot in the process. In fact, the shield guy on the team had to sacrifice himself so that Tsukino and the others could escape from the front lines when things got really intense. Tsukino watches in horror as her comrade is torn to pieces by a monster. And she can't do anything about it. With pain in her voice, Tsukino lets her surviving comrades know that the more of them who survive, the better it is. She tells them that she is ready to bet on the possibility that Rei can clear the trial. Tsukino stands strong while addressing her comrades, letting them know that clearing the dungeon and bringing peace to Japan would be the best tribute to their comrades who gave their lives. Tsukino is able to motivate them into believing in what she believes in. But Rei speaks harshly, telling the group that he doesn't want any dead weights on the team because he can actually handle the boss himself. Tsukino is blown away by Rei's confidence, and she realizes that this increases the likelihood that he's the last of the 10 transcendents. Since she is curious about all of these, Tsukino is eager to see how Rei is going to fight in the battle. Once everyone is ready, Rai suggests that they move out. Upon stepping out of the tent, Tsukino reminds Rai that he said he would take a job depending on the reward. Tsukino then tells Rai that they would like to join the battle against the boss. The moment Rei hears this, he realizes that a business opportunity is about to open up for him again. Rei then turns to Tsukino, asking if she is not after the reward for the boss kill. And Tsukino replies that she is aware of the fact that they are a burden. Since this is the case, she wants Rei to think of the reward as compensation for the trouble they have caused him. When Rei hears this, he immediately negotiates his price, saying he is going to need 10 million yen per person. He mentions that the first half will come as an advanced payment, and whatever happens in the battle stays between them. Rei says these are his conditions, and since there is no guarantee for their lives, he tells them that the reward will be split among the survivors. After hearing everything, Tsukino tells Rai that she is cool with the deal. Meanwhile, most of the party is not happy with Tsukino's decision that they are going to join Rai in the boss fight. While they are busy arguing, Rai is busy thinking of the amount of money he can make. Moments later, the group runs into a swarm of monsters. And just like before, Rei is about to wipe them out, but Tsukino offers to take care of them. She places her chocolate bar in her mouth and talks about how angry she is whenever anyone interrupts her meal. She unleashes the Inferno Cyclone skill, which consumes all of the monsters at once, leaving Rei impressed. Her party members also praise her, saying, "This is the norm for Tsukino." With the monsters out of the equation, Tsukino swallows the chocolate bar, and she tells Rai that it is time they leave. Rai cannot believe that Tsukino finished the huge pile of snacks in just 10 minutes. Rai then brings out his phone, saying he has confirmed the advanced payment. And it is finally time for them to face Japan's first trial so that they can conquer it. As they proceed further down the dungeon, one of Tsukino's party members, a bald-headed dude, downplays Rei's efforts, saying he is disappointed that he doesn't have any flashy skills. He mentions that he is only using physical attacks when he was expecting something really great from him. However, Tsukino opens his eyes to the real situation of things, telling him to look at the monsters that Rei is taking down. Tsukino explains that the monsters have no external injuries whatsoever, which means he is killing them with a single thrust. The dude finally realizes that Rei is a skilled fighter. Tsukino can also see that Rei's movements are overwhelmingly precise, as if he doesn't even have to use any big techniques. Sometime later, they arrive at the front of the 5th floor boss room. The bald-headed dude from earlier says he has a bad feeling about the whole thing. But Tsukino motivates the team, telling them that it is time they take on the challenge so that they can avenge their fallen heroes. Tsukino even reveals her decision to go all out from the start, and the whole gang is behind her. They dash into the room to find a spider boss standing tall in the room. The fire users on the team including Tsukino. All go all out from the start, throwing powerful attacks at the spider boss. This leaves a loud cloud of fire that leaves some of the party members believing that they have won. But Rai quickly corrects their delusion. When the fire clears out, the spider boss emerges with no damage to its body whatsoever. When Tsukino sees this, she is shocked because insect-type monsters are supposed to be susceptible to fire. Rai then mentions that they are right about the spider being weak to fire, but the power attack is actually not enough. Suddenly, the spider hits them with its webs, forcing them to all start running around to dodge. Tsukino urges her subordinates not to get caught in the sticky webs, because if it happens, it will be hard for them to escape on their own. At this point, the party members now realize that things are worse than they thought. Two members slack off and almost get shot with the web. But Ray swings in to save their lives, grabbing them off at the right moment. The two thank him for saving them, but he tells them that they don't have any reason to thank him because if any one of them dies, the reward will be reduced by 10 million. And he doesn't joke with his money. However, he urges them not to overdo it because it is still stressful for him running around and saving them. In fact, he suggests that they start paying him 1 million each once he saves their lives. And the two scream at Rai because he is already practicing pure extortion. Deep down, Rai knows that if he deliberately drags out the battle, he could make a killing on the rescue fee of 1 million per person, but at the same time, the group is a part of a big guild, which is connected to the government. He figures out that going too easy might just affect future money-making opportunities for him. Ray then activates the soul vision skill, and he realizes that if he surprises Tsukino, he might actually get a bonus from the battle. Apparently, the condition to extract Tsukino's Type D swordsman soul fragment is to make her experience the greatest surprise of her life. Ray then decides to do something flashy, and he finally joins the battle. He leaps toward the spider, and with just a single strike, he cuts off one of the spider's limbs. Ray finds himself standing in front of the spider, and it hits Ray with one of its legs, which appears like a clean hit because the ground under Ray shatters. This leaves a cloud of dust in the air, and when Tsukino sees this, she starts to panic because she believes that there is no way they can defeat a monster that even Rai couldn't beat. Just then, they hear Ray's voice coming from the dust, and it appears that he easily caught the spider's leg with just one hand. Rai had used a skill called Soul Strength to block the hit as if it were nothing. The party members are shocked when they see what Ray has just done. Ray grabs the spider's leg and flings the spider into the distance, causing it to fall on its back. Ray dashes toward the spider, and it turns out that by flipping the spider on its back, Rai has opened up its weak spot. Rai immediately delivers a clean cut through the spider's abdomen to eliminate it. When the party members see this, they start celebrating that they have defeated the spider. But Rai lets them know that they are actually misunderstanding the whole thing. He lets them know that they have not defeated the monster because it is just the beginning. Suddenly, a large burst of substance bursts out from the spider's tummy, and it immediately regenerates all missing limbs and internal organs. As if this is not bad enough, the spider monster has gotten way bigger than before. This is not new to Ray because he knows that this is the spider's second form, and its aggression is far greater than its first form. When the party hears this, they start to panic because even its first form is too hard for them to handle. Ray lets the guys know that they have difficulty fighting the spider because they are a bunch of weaklings. Rai takes charge of the fight again, and he activates the soul web flying around the monster to incapacitate it with this. Once the spider is restrained, Rai activates the soul incineration array, which can only be activated by a level 40 player and above. This skill also consumes a mage's soul fragment, a flame user soul fragment, and a warrior's soul fragment to activate. The moment Tsukino sees Rai activate the soul array skill, she tells her party members to get away because she can sense something really dangerous coming their way. Everybody immediately dashes to safety, and the spider goes up in a large, overwhelming flame that leaves even Tsukino shocked. She realizes that the firepower that Rai just unleashed is several dozen times more powerful than her max firepower. However, the question that is left is if they have managed to kill the monster. But only Rai can answer this. Without asking for Rai's insight, the party members assume that the monster has been defeated. Suddenly, they notice a giant jewel where the spider was previously standing. The party members are blown away by this because they have seen rare items in the past, but this is the biggest they have seen. However, Rai tells the group to move aside, and they immediately start bashing Rai. Saying he is trying to keep the whole loot to himself, they soon realize that they are screwed when the fire clears out, revealing that the jewel they were staring at was the spider. Apparently, this is the spider's final form, and its body is covered in crystal. Instead of being scared, Rai sees the spider as a means of income because if they are able to take down the monster, it is going to provide a huge sum. The party starts to panic because they can't believe that even after everything, the fight is not yet over. Tsukino then tells her party members to get ready because the monster is about to attack them. Suddenly, the spider unleashes its long limbs like a whip, sending it throughout the room. Tsukino manages to escape the first wave of attack, but she can see that the monster is faster than before. Rai can see how dangerous the situation is, and he tells Tsukino and her party members to run to the entrance if they don't want to die. As they dash away, Tsukino asks Rai what he plans to do. But Rai replies that it is obvious what he plans to do. Rai lets Tsukino know that he is going to crush the monster and collect everything it has to provide. Rai mentions that the final form of the spider attacks without holding back until the opponent dies. Rai urges Tsukino and her people to get out of the way as fast as they can. This leaves Rai facing off against the spider. And he knows that he can manage to dodge its dangerous limbs, but taking it down is now the problem. Rai tries to strike down one of the limbs, but his dagger bounces off. And this tells Rai that even with the goat's dagger strength, it can't cut through the crystal. Since this is the case, he decides to attack the spider's weak point. Rai activates the soul reserve, and he remains motionless in the sky. The party members, who are safely hidden behind a barrier, wonder what Rai is doing, because he is clearly open to the attack. Unknown to them, this is what Rai actually wants. Rai soon gets caught with the spider's limbs, causing a pool of blood to leave his body. Tsukino and her party watch in horror because they know that they are screwed if the spider kills Rai. Rai is lifted into the air by the spider and Tsukino screams in horror, believing that Rai is dead. Suddenly, Rai lets out an evil laugh because he has finally caught the spider exactly where he wants. While using his left hand to hold on to the spider's limb, Rai activates the Soul Rampage skill, and he swings his dagger so hard that it unleashes a powerful slash that shatters the spider down to its last atom. The crystal shatters into pieces, and Rai crashes to the ground too. Rai figures out that he has to heal himself quickly because he is just about to die. Rai is searching through his skill when 3 of Tsukino's party members who are healers step up to heal him. The trio is able to come through, and their magic heals Rai completely. Rai thanks them for this because he didn't have to use his own skills. Tsukino soon notices the smile on his face, and she immediately asks Rai if he intentionally took the hits. Rai replies that she is right, because in the game, taking attacks to the point where one doesn't die is a basic technique. Rai's nonchalant behavior ultimately shocks Tsukino, who reminds Rai that they are not in a game, but in reality. Rai admits that Tsukino is right, but he still believes that, when it comes to combat, the same strategy works both in the game and in reality. To Rai, he believes that reality and the game are not different. When Tsukino hears this, she suffers a brain lag because she now sees Rai as a crazy dude. Ultimately, this serves as the surprise condition for Rai to extract her soul fragment. Rai is glad that it worked out that way because he actually had another method in mind to surprise Tsukino. Since the trial has been cleared, the system requires that they enter the name of the slaying party because they have 5 minutes until the dungeon disappears. The party starts to celebrate this, and they all conclude that Rai was the one who saved the day. Ray, on the other hand, is more concerned about how to share the reward before the dungeon disappears. Since all the reward was promised to him, Rai wants Tsukino to collect it instead and then transfer it into his account. When Tsukino hears this, she realizes that Rai is basically passing the credit to them. She reminds Rai that the whole thing will be heavily covered in the news. And Rai says it would be better if it were reported as a guild's victory so that the next trial reward will increase. Deep down, Rai just doesn't want his identity to leak out because if it does, he believes that it might make his money-making harder. Tsukino thanks Rai for thinking about the money, but believes that it is totally weird for her to take the credit for the slaying. Rai assures Tsukino that he is fine with it. He lets her know that she can just say Genesis Wings hired him for 1 billion, and Tsukino agrees to this. With both sides agreeing to this, Genesis Wings input their name as the slaying party. Rai is confident that with this method, no information from Genesis Wings will leak because if it does, it would be like announcing that they stole someone else's credit. With this, everyone basically receives the notification that the disaster for the trial target area, which is Japan, has been averted. Reporters waste no time moving to the scene to broadcast a live video of the dungeon disappearing and the players evacuating the scene. All the surviving players are taken through a portal and then safely transported to the surface. The moment they all touch down on the surface, a loud celebration erupts because most have been stuck in the dungeon for days. A monument appears on the scene, which will carry Genesis Wings' name as the conqueror of the trial. As if it were a race, reporters are seen flooding to the scene en masse because they all want to get the name of the guild that cleared the dungeon. Before Tsukino knows it, she sees hundreds of reporters lining up to get a statement. Tsukino calls Rei's name because she wants to confirm if he is really cool without revealing that he did everything. However, by the time she turns around, she realizes that Rei has vanished from the scene. However, he left a note telling Tsukino to contact him if there is a profitable deal. Seeing this, Tsukino believes she is starting to understand a little about who Rei really is. Tsukino finally agrees to speak with the reporters, and they bombard her with a series of questions all at once. Tsukino then takes a deep breath before telling everyone, including those who are watching in their homes, that the Genesis Wings were the ones who cleared the trial. However, she lets them know that this wasn't achieved by the guild alone because there are other people who supported them and helped in the subjugation. Meanwhile, Rei has met up with Cookie, who is there to pick him up. After giving her speech, Tsukino bows to thank everyone, and this impresses the reporters because she is highly humble. When Rei sees this, he realizes that Tsukino is actually doing well. He knows that being in such a spotlight, it might bring immense profit if handled well. However, he is not ready to face media paparazzi. And he figures out that preparing a face for public display, which is separate from his original self, might be the only way to handle it. Moments later, Rai tells Cookie that he is starving, and he urges him to stop by anywhere he can eat. The news soon traveled around that Genesis Wings had cleared the dreadful trial of Japan. Apparently, this is the second time a national-level trial has been cleared, and the first one is the United States. Later on, Rei creates his own guild, which he names Gold Farm. While sitting in his office, he receives the deposit of 1 billion yen, and he grins wholeheartedly. Some of the guild members hear this and are distraught that Rei has not even given them a penny out of the whole money. In addition, Rei is making them do a lot of trash work, like wrapping coins in paper, even though they have no idea what they are doing. One of them urges his colleagues not to think too much about it because in the guild, Rai is the president. But he immediately corrects himself. Surprisingly, Rai has taken up the position of a clerk, but everyone knows that he has the absolute authority. It turns out that Rai actually appointed Rumi as the guild master, which is shocking to the lady herself. She is forced to ask Rai if he is sure about appointing her as the guild master. Rai replies that only players ranked B or higher can establish a guild. And since Rumi is already B rank, he had to make her the guild master. Nonetheless, believes that there are far more competent people than her in the guild, but Rai lets her know that he chose her because of her suitability. Apparently, all the members of the Cash Cow Squad have all grown to be rank or higher, thanks to the information he is providing on where to level up. However, there are still differences in aptitudes among them. And looking at it, Rumi is the least suited for earning money, but she is quick-witted and great with people. Because of this, Rai concludes that she is perfect as the face of the guild. Cookie soon shows up with an article telling Rai that Rumi is blowing up online. When Rai realizes that everyone is B rank, he concludes that it was the best decision to have made himself a clerk. Cookie then asks Rai why establish a guild when he is not going to be the president because he is pretty strong. Rai reveals that the main reason he created the guild is to receive trial-clearing commissions. He mentions that aside from large-scale trials, which target nations or continents, there are also smaller trials targeting areas like towns, cities, or prefectures. And since only official guilds that are recognized by the state can take on trials, he has no choice but to establish one. Kyuki and Room are blown away by this, because they didn't know this if Rai had not explained it to them. After the short lecture, tells Rai that she has listed the trials with low difficulty and high rewards for him. However, Rai tells her to abandon those ones first, and he gives her a trial request that she is supposed to take on. Rumi checks it out and realizes that it is a small trial with a 5 million yen reward. Room is surprised to see this, because there are other trials that offer better rewards than the one Rai is choosing. Cookie whispers in Ian's ear, asking him if Rai has gone crazy for picking a trial that has the lowest money. Ian quickly reminds Kyuki that he is dead if Rai hears what he just said. Rumi is the first to figure out that Rai must have a reason for picking the trial, and she suspects that there is something more valuable than the reward in it. Rai confirms this, and with a scary aura, he tells to make sure she accepts the trial. Soon afterward, Rai heads to the trial site, and on his way there, Rumi calls him, telling him that the requested task has been successfully accepted, and the reward remains 5 million yen. Ray commends her for the good work, saying he's going to get to the trial site in about 30 minutes. Later on, Ray gets a call from one of his guild members, Yugji, who has been monitoring the trial under Ray's instructions. Yugji mentions that some suspicious individuals have entered the trial site, and Rai asks him how many there are. The dude replies that they are 5. And Rai asks him if they have noticed him, but he assures Ray that they haven't. With this, Rai tells Yugji to leave the area and leave the rest to him. When Ray realizes that some people have gained unauthorized entry into the trial, he figures out that they are not ordinary people. He then decides that it is time to hide his face. He begins the process of creating an enigmatic mask, and the system tells him to select the materials for item generation. Ray plans to use the fragment of the swordsman's soul type D, which he got from Tsukino. The system tells him that he has an option for auto-generation of the enigmatic mask, but the success rate for this is less than 1%. The system asks to proceed with the process, but Rai declines, saying he's going to do it manually. The system informs him that the success rate for manual creation is undefined. In addition, failing might cause mental and physical backlash, and the system asks him if he still wants to continue, to which Rai says yes. Ray is then taken into the soul world, where he will be required to harmonize the soul. There are pieces of soul fragments scattered everywhere, which Rai is required to piece everything together. He is informed that the base success rate is below 1%, which increases the difficulty. Rai is then given 60 minutes to piece everything together, and in the last second, Ray finishes the harmonization of the fragments. This turns out to be a success, and he is returned to the real world, where he is informed that the enigmatic mask has been created. After the mask has been created, Ray tells Ian to drop him off just before they get to the trial site. Rai then puts on the mask, which immediately transforms his appearance into a blonde-headed dude. With this, Ray strolls to the trial area, and from the entrance, he finds monster carcasses everywhere, which he realizes that the burnt is still fresh. This tells him that someone else has entered the trial site before him, just like Yugji said. He continues further and notices that the hidden door is open. And with this, Rai realizes that the group is after the hidden trial. Basically, trials are categorized by their scope. And those targeting nations are large-scale trials. However, those targeting towns or villages are small-scale trials. Although small-scale trials are easier, the rewards are trash. However, there are exceptions because there are hidden trials. These are secret trials generated within small-scale trials, and their difficulty is greater than that of the main trial. Although rare items can be obtained inside the trial area. Since it is a hidden trial, Ray figures out that the players who have infiltrated it are players with considerable information. Moments later, Ray runs into a bunch of shady dudes in black robes. The leader of the team looks cool, and he asks Rai if he's from the gold farm. Ray takes a minute before answering, and he feigns ignorance of what the gold farm is. The team leader then tells Rai that it doesn't matter if he is from the gold farm or not. Rai lets the dudes know that he has no intention of clearing the hidden trial for their sake. But the team leader tells Rai that he has no need to clear the trial because they have already cleared it. The team leader whips out an item which he calls the Box of Evolution, which is the reward for clearing the dungeon. When Rai sees the box, he realizes that the team has beaten him to the item. Just to be safe, he hides his right hand behind his back and he activates his weapon. Just then, the team leader throws the box to him and he catches it. With a smile on his face, the team leader tells Rai that they are willing to give him the box as a token of goodwill. However, in return, the dude wants Ray to take on a task for them. Ray asks what the task is, and the team leader tells him that they want him to stop the completion of a certain small-scale trial, and the dude assures Ray that he can use whatever method he deems fit. The team leader, Ridge, says he can tell that Rai is a capable player, and eliminating the party attempting to clear the trial should be nothing to him. When Ray hears this, he immediately starts wondering why they would want to stop a trial's completion. Rai finally replies to the request, saying he can see that they are from the Dark Guild. He figures out that the group is trying to do the same thing that happened in Argentina. Apparently, 2 weeks ago, one of Argentina's cities, Mendoza, failed an easy trial request and was destroyed. However, the problem was what happened a week before this. It turns out that the companies based in Mendoza were hit by a massive wave of short-selling. When Rumi and Rai saw this, she mentioned that it was as if Mendoza's fall had been predicted in advance. It turns out that the culprit was rumored to be a Dark Guild, but Rai didn't know that they were already targeting Japan as well. Ridge then tells Rai that they are going to leave him to imagine why he was given the request. But the main thing is to know if he is interested in accepting or not. Rai sharply says no, telling Ridge that the whole request is tempting, but if he would like to destroy a city, he wants to be the one to short-sell it himself because it would be more profitable. Ridge expresses his disappointment and tells Rai to return the box, but tells him that they will also be collecting interest for temporarily lending the box to him. Rai is confused when he hears this, and Ridge confirms that the interest is his life. Ridge and the rest of the team bring out a syringe containing a dark liquid, telling Rai that his options are to either cooperate with them or die. Rai shows no sign of weakness as he whips out his sword, asking Ridge and his team if they think they can win. Ridge replies that they might not win under normal circumstances, but he reminds Rai that they just cleared the hidden trial, so it would be disastrous for Rai to underestimate them. Ridge and his team then inject themselves with the contents of the syringe, telling him that they are going to show him that player skills are useless against the Dark Guild. The moment the content of the syringe gets into their system, they start moving funny, and Ray realizes that the team injected themselves with a doping item. This leaves Ray wondering whether such a thing was present in the game. However, he notices that there are no changes on their body. But since he doesn't know what the syringe contained, he doesn't even know what to expect. However, he notices that there is something weird with the box he is holding, but he decides to play along. Just then, Ridge reaches into his pocket, and he activates a remote-controlled device that immediately detonates the box that Rai is holding. Rai is engulfed in a cloud of fire and Ridge, and his friends start laughing like maniacs. They make fun of him for falling for such an easy trap. Ridge talks about how they directed Ray's attention to their bodies, so he won't focus on the small box. Which is the real deal? Even though the plan went smoothly, Ridge says it is a shame that he won't get himself a pawn. Ridge then walks to the explosion site. But to everyone's horror, there is no body. Out of nowhere, all of Ridge's men are taken out in an instant. They scream out in pain, and Ridge reacts to this with a fire blast from his hand. In an attempt to hit Rai, he ends up blasting off some of his counterparts. By the time everything settles down, Rai is already behind him with a dagger to his neck. Rai then restrains Ridge with the soul-bending skill, causing the dude to scream out in pain. Ridge is shocked to see that Ray is unharmed, even though he got hit with the explosion. Rai smiles while telling Ridge that he is not a fool because he actually knows the weight of the evolution box. Ray mentions that he already knew from the beginning that the box had explosives inside it. Ridge is surprised to hear this, and he asks Rai why he intentionally took the box when he knew that something was wrong. Rai casually replies that Ridge is underestimating high-elo players way too much. Ray says an explosive fit into a small box is nothing to him. But he lets Ridge and his gang know that he is going to take all of their money as compensation. Rai brings out his phone to make a call, and Ridge starts to panic, believing that Rai is trying to call the police. Rai laughs this off, saying the person he is calling is more important. It turns out that Rai called Rumi, and he tells her to find the area where short-selling stocks are concentrated in Japan. Rai lets Rumi know that there is the possibility that the area has become a target of the Dark Guild, so they are going to have to protect this area. When Ridge hears this, he smiles, telling Rai that he is trying to play the role of a hero. But Ray smiles because Ridge is saying trash. Rai explains that the Dark Guild is shortling like crazy, which means the stocks are cheap like crazy at the moment. Rai plans to buy all of them up and then conquer the trial to make a huge profit from it. Ridge panics when he hears this, and he asks Rai if he is seriously planning to oppose the Dark Guild, and Rai replies that for money, he doesn't mind making the Dark Guild his enemies. However, he tells Ridge that he would have to cooperate with him, but Ridge demands to know why Rai is so confident that he is going to cooperate. Rai ignores him and puts a call through to again asking her if the re-education course is ready. It turns out that the education course that Rai is talking about is a bunch of torture devices that he plans to use on stubborn enemies. Even Room is skeptical about using it on humans, but Rai assures her that he has gotten a suitable test subject, and he is going to deliver them later. Rai also uses the evolution box to evolve the fragment of the sorcerer's soul type F to type E later on. Rai heads to the Modern Art Museum, which is the target of the Dark Guild. Just like before, Rai is wearing the enigmatic mask to disguise his identity. It turns out that he was able to get this information after the cash cows tortured Ridge and his friends into submission. However, Rumi is worried that Rai is heading into danger, even though they don't know how many enemies there are. Rai assures Rumi that she doesn't have to worry about anything, but urges her to keep an eye on his stock movements. Apparently, a dude named Takahisa posted a request for people to gather to protect the town, but let them know that there will be no reward. He sets the meeting place at the city hall's front square. Now that people are gathered, he asks those who are willing to participate in the museum trial to gather. Rai is surprised that a lot of people have gathered to protect the town, even though there is no reward being given. Thanks to the number of people there, Ray figures out that it would be easy for the Dark Guild to sneak in a spy. And he figures out that finding the spy before everything starts is the way forward. Once they are ready, Takahisa tells the people to get a move on, but urges them to scream for help if a strong enemy shows up, because their main forces will definitely come to assist. When Rai realizes that there is no strategy being employed, He figures out that he will get the chance to act the way he wants. At the same time, he happens to have figured out who the spy is because among the 107 participating players, everyone present is a spy except for Rai himself, which means the other 106 players are out to get him. Upon entering the museum hall, Rai realizes that he's already surrounded by a bunch of players who clearly have hostile intentions toward him. The ones close to him hold a can of igniting gas each, and once they believe that they have cornered him, they unleash their can of gas, igniting a large fire in an attempt to roast Rai. However, Rai leaps into the air to dodge the fire. And while he is in the air, he notices that the other circle of enemies is armed with swords and the like. With this information, Rai knows how to properly engage them. He descends upon them and knocks out a few with his incredible skill. He is disappointed that they are coming at him right from the start without a strategy. Takahisa soon shows up in the distance, asking Rai what happened. While Rai is still trying to explain that he was suddenly attacked by the group, Takahisa himself swings his fist at Rai. Surprisingly, there is a hidden knife in his hand that he plans to use on Rai, but Rai easily grabs the knife. Takahisa is shocked to see this, because Rai basically projected much power at the moment. Realizing that Rai might be dangerous, he leaps backwards and Rai breaks the knife, berating Takahisa for coming at him with a weapon that is not even a game item. With Takahisa back with the rest of the squad, Rai asks them if they are all minions of the Dark Guild. Takahisa smiles evilly when he hears this, and he tells Rai that since he already knows all of these, there is no need for tricks again. Surprisingly, two members of the group express their shock that Tahisa is working with the Dark Guild because they only came for a request to protect the place from an environmental organization. Tahisa nervously smiles, saying it was an environmental protection under the Dark Guild. He feigns ignorance, saying he forgot to mention it, but then he asks Rai to join them. Takahisa claims that it is not their job to kill him, but to protect the trial. Takahisa says it would be nice if they could avoid fighting, assuring Rai that he is going to speak to the higher-ups so that he can get a daily wage of 100,000 yen. When the rest of the group hears this, they protest against the decision, reminding Takahisa that they are only getting paid 30,000 yen. Rai, on the other hand, is surprised that the Dark Guild is willing to pay such a huge amount of money, and he knows that his previous self would have jumped at the money. However, he is now a changed person, and he tells Takahisa that he would have to refuse the offer. This pisses Takahisa off, and he tells Rai that he has to die. To motivate the group, Takahisa promises to give whoever lands the first attack, the person who delivers the last blow, and the MVP of the battle 100,000 yen. This works really well, as the group rushes toward Rai in an attempt to kill him. Rai smiles because he knows that they are all rushing to their deaths. With little to no effort, he knocks them all down. Suddenly, Takahisa comes rushing at him, but Rai meets him halfway with a knee kick to the face. Rai then jumps over him and activates the soulbinding skill to restrain him. Rai then looks back to see the two from before begging Rai to spare their lives. Rai decides not to touch them because they don't know anything about the Dark Guild. And in addition, they look like people who can be easily used. Rai then picks up his phone to call Rumi, telling her that he managed to run into a big harvest because he has just secured at least 100 new cash cows for the army. However, Rai says the leader of the group, who is Takahisa, would have to undergo the re-education course. Suddenly, a sword imbued with a dark aura comes flying at Rai, but he manages to dodge the strike. He looks up to see the culprit standing by the balcony, and Rai smiles, saying, "The dude finally decided to show himself." The dude is also wearing a mask, and he asks Rai when he noticed his presence. Rai replies that he was aware from the very beginning. He could easily see that those who first attacked him were weak, and they were decoys. Rai sensed that the dude on mask was the only one radiating a different aura, even though he was trying really hard to hold back his power. The new dude is surprised too. Hear all these, and he finally understands why he couldn't find any gaps to attack Rai. Nonetheless, he is curious to see if Ray can withstand his recurrent attacks. He lunges at Rai and starts swinging at him like crazy. But even with how fast his movements are, Ray could still follow through with his dagger. The dude then starts talking to Rai as if he knows him, saying he has become stronger since the game. Rai replies with a familiar tone, telling the dude that he has gotten stronger than he was in the game. As the fight continues, Rai manages to cut the dude's mask to get a good look at his real face. Rai is not entirely surprised, because he was already suspecting that it was his counterpart in the game, Yudo. Yudo also offers his greetings to Ray, telling him that he is sad that they have to reunite in such a way because now he has to kill Rai. Rai takes off his mask to reveal his real face, and he asks if he really thinks he can kill him. Yu gets into a combat position and activates a skill called Dual Blader. As he dashes toward Rai, he activates another skill, the over-acceleration, with the intention of blitzing Rai. He manages to get the drop on Ray as he cuts his left shoulder, forcing Rai to quickly readjust while commending Yudo because he is still very fast. However, Rai still doesn't think Yudo has what it takes to deal with him. Rai then activates the Soul's Eye skill to assess Yudo's strength. He realizes that Yudo is currently a level 38 player, and his stats are pretty impressive, too. Thanks to this, he is able to easily follow Yudo's movements. And when Yudo tries to attack him from behind, Ray easily blocks it. Yudo is shocked, and while he is still trying to pull himself together, Ray lands a counterattack by kicking him in the face, sending him straight into a wall. Yu groans in pain and Ray lets him know that his speed is decent, but there is no strength behind his sword. Rai tells him that attacks like this won't even scrape him. Rai then activates the Soul Bind to restrict Yudo from moving, shocking him. Yudo expresses his shock that the skill is working, since he believes that he and Rai should be on the same level. However, Rai lets him know that the difference in level is really overwhelming. Ray then urges Yudo to quit the Dark Guild and join him in making money since he is an exceptional player. Rai lets Yudo know that with his skills, he can actually earn a lot of money. Yudo hesitantly replies that he can't, and Ray asks him why he can't join him. Yu replies that he can't say, and Rai decides to strengthen the soulbind to cause him pain so he can force him to talk. Yu screams out in pain, but still lets Rai know that he can't talk because if he does, something will happen. Without even finishing his statement, Rai already figures out that there is something. He then asks him about his brother Hashi, but Yudo finds it hard to answer. Everything starts becoming clear to Rai, and he asks Yudo if Hashi is being held hostage. Yudo admits that Rai has seen right through him, and this just confirms Rai's theory that there is more to the story. In the past, Prophecy Online was infamous for its unreasonable difficulty, which caused players to run away from playing the game. While the low difficulty areas were manageable, the higher difficulty dungeons had almost no one challenging them. To find comrades who share the same perspective was rare, and among these comrades are Yudo and his brother Hisashi. Even though in his current state, he can take on bosses alone, it was he and the brothers who were fighting against the bosses. However, as the difference in their abilities grew, they stopped adventuring together, but they still kept in touch via chat. However, Ray never thought he would meet Yudo the way he just met him. After releasing him from the soulbinds, Ray asks him where Hashi is, and Yudo comes clean, saying he doesn't know because they didn't even tell him where Hashi is being held. Just then, Yudo remembers that Ray's subclass is Soul Smith. He begs Rai to help him use this skill to find his brother. Rai replies that he is actually using the Soul Smith in real life. But he reminds that they are no longer in a game, but in real life. Rai confesses that in real life, he only moves for the money. Yudo immediately offers everything he has in his wallet, just so he can save his brother. Ray then asks Yudo if he has anything related to his brother that he can use for the search. Yu brings out a baseball cap and hands it over to Ray. Rai takes the cap and he activates his skill Soul Search. And to their dismay, the system reveals that Hashi is already dead. Yu cannot believe his eyes, But the system doesn't stop there, as it reveals Hashi's killer to be a dude named Raven. Yudo almost goes crazy when he sees this, and Ray asks Yudo if he knows who Raven is. Yu replies that he knows Raven because he was the one who held his brother hostage, forcing him to work for him. Yuito goes really mad as he declares his intention to kill Raven for what he did. Yuito tells Rai that he is going to work under him as long as he wants. But he wants Rai to help him kill Raven. Rai admits that he is pissed about Hizashi's death because he was just like a little brother to him, too. Yudo already believes that Ray is going to accept the task. But Ray just walks past him, telling him not to jump to conclusions because he is busy making money. As he walks away, Rai tells Yudo that he doesn't have time for battles that don't pay. Yudo is shocked and horrified to hear this, and just then, Ray receives a text from Tsukino. Tsukino says she is aware that Rai fought the Dark Guild in the trial of the museum, and Rai wonders how Tsukino knew this. Tsukino then asks Rai if he took any other requests, but Ray is confused about what she means. Tsukino mentions that there is a government request to wipe out the Dark Guild headquarters, and the reward is 1 billion yen. Rai almost goes crazy when he sees this, because he didn't even know that such a request existed. Ray then asks Tsukino where she heard about the request, and she mentioned that it was an unofficial request to Wings of Genesis. She urges Ray to keep the information confidential. Rai asks if he can leak the information, but Tsukino panics and tells him that he is only getting the information because of who he is. Tsukino reveals that the Dark Guild headquarters have over 10 billion yen worth of assets. But if they succeed, they can just report that there was nothing inside and the government will look away. Ray then turns to Yudo asking him if Raven is in the Dark Guild headquarters. Yu confirms this, saying Raven is the head of the Japanese branch of the Dark Guild, which is why he hardly leaves the main base. With a smile on his face, Ray tells Yudo that he has changed his mind and that he is going to help him get his revenge. Without wasting time, the Gold Farm Guild applies to take part in the request. Soon afterward, Tsukino contacts Ray, telling him that the police have identified the Dark Guild's headquarters, and local authorities seem to be investigating the site. However, Ray lets her know that he already knew this because he was conducting his own investigation. Tsukino then urges Rai to assist with the investigation if he is in the area, because if the Dark Guild resists, the police won't be able to handle it. As usual, Ray asks Tsukino about the reward, and he demands that he wants 100,000 yen for every guild member that he captures. In addition, he is going to get 100,000 yen for protecting each officer. Tsukino is shocked to see this, but she assures Rai that she is going to negotiate with the government. And even if they don't agree to this, Genesis Wing will cover the bills. Rai smiles happily when he hears this and tells Tsukino that she has herself a deal. After he is done texting Tsukino, Ray tells Yudo that the police have discovered the Dark Guild's base, and Yudo suggests that they finish the whole thing once and for all. However, Rai tells Yudo not to come with him because to the guild, Yudo is dead and he would like to keep it that way. In the meantime, agrees with him and tells him that he is going to wait for him while he settles the mission. As Rai leaves, Yudo urges Rai to be careful because the Dark Guild would have rigged the building with traps since they know that the police are coming. Moments later, Rai arrives at the location and without hesitation, he passes under the police line. One of the detectives tries to stop, lying that the building is closed off because of a gas leak. But Rai lets him know that he is there to assist Genesis Wings with the investigation. The moment he hears this, the dude apologizes and takes Rai to the operation table, where the chief detective is laying out the plan for the operation. When the chief detective is informed of Rai's presence, he is not pleased because he believes that players have no business in police investigations. The chief detective speaks rudely to Rai, telling him not to try anything because he is only there based on orders from above. The man and his men then prepare to breach the building, but Ray urges them not to try to access the building. However, no one listens to him, and the result of this is a loud explosion from the upper floor of the building. This scatters debris everywhere, but to save the cops, Ray activates the soul thread skill. Using this, he is able to catch all of the debris, thus saving the cops. Rai then heads into the building to save the cops who breach the building. However, he is not doing this out of the goodness of his heart, but because he has been promised 100,000 yen for every cop he saves. Using the soul thread, he gathers all of the cops like Spider-Man and he lets them down the building. Once he is done saving the cops, Ray lets them know that he is done and he leaves. Ray's short stay with them immediately changes their view on how they see players. When Rai returns to where Yuto is waiting, he lets him know that the building was empty because the Dark Guild knew about the police's movements. Ray then asks Yu if he knows any other bases that the Dark Guild might be hiding. With a disappointing face, Yuto reveals that the building they just raided is the only place that he knows. Yu reveals that he has ditched everything given to him by the Dark Guild the day he met Ray, and this includes his smartphone. However, he believes that they might find clues if they go back to the trial museum. Rai advises against this, saying there is a high chance that their location will be discovered. In addition, Rai reveals that he has already narrowed down where the hideout might be, and this surprises Yuto. Rai explains that in a situation where the police are making a big move, it would be hard to secure a proper office or warehouse. He mentions that they would want to move to a location where there are no cameras and a remote area. With this, Yuto believes that a deserted dungeon with poor rewards might be the answer to this. Rai confirms this, saying he already has the Gold Farm Guild investigating probable locations. Yuto is confused when he hears the Gold Farm, and Ray explains that Gold Farm is his guild. Rai tells Yuto that he is now a mandatory member of the guild, and it would be better if he starts earning his pay. Yuto then asks if his party members will join the fight. But Rai says no, because he has left them to handle other things. And by other things, they are all stuck in the office wrapping coins in paper. Rai explains that he can summon them anytime he wants. But he doesn't want anything that will mess with his profit. Not long after this, Rai gets a text telling him that the Castle of Carnage, which is located in the mountains of Chiba, is the closest to his search criteria. Because there is no official address for this, the map location is attached to it. When Ray checks it out, he agrees that the location is going to be a convenient base since they will be able to control the spawn points. Even though the difficulty and rewards are poor, no one actually goes, which is why the location is the perfect place to hide. Rai then asks Yu if the special request he made earlier is ready, and Yuto assures him that it is. Rai had already arranged something like this, as if he knew where the hideout would be. Yu leads Ray to where an SUV is packed, assuring him that the car can handle even the roughest mountains. Without wasting time, the two begin the journey to the mountains, and Ray tells Yuto to go as fast as he can, assuring him that he is going to pay whatever fine he gets for overspeeding. Yuto acknowledges this and excitedly steps on the gas, shooting the SUV out of the parking garage onto the road. Ray then inputs their destination on the map, telling Yuto to focus on driving while he handles other things. Rai then puts on his enigmatic mask, just in case in preparation for the battle ahead. Yuto proves himself to be a crazy driver as he drives the car in the most extraordinary way. He goes through corners and bushes like they are nothing. Even Ray is left holding his head in frustration because he didn't expect Uto to be this crazy. At some point, he drives off the cliff, but the landing is too rough for the tires. When the tires finally gave out, Ray had almost passed out thanks to Yuto's crazy driving. In Yuto's defense, he believed that it would be less likely for the enemy to spot them if they went straight down the cliff. Yuto tells Rai that they are supposed to use the car to the best of its abilities. After parking the car, Ray packs their luggage and he tells that he has to carry some. Yuto cannot believe that after he just finished driving, he also has to carry heavy luggage. Yuto is curious about what is inside the luggage, and Ray tells him the bags are filled with weapons. He reminds that they are just two and they are going up against a large group, which means that they have to be prepared. Moments later, they arrive at the vicinity of their target and they see a bunch of dudes guarding the gate to the dungeon. Even the guards are already bored with staying at the gate because they don't believe anyone would come to such a location. Nonetheless, they wish that there would be intruders so that they can beat them up. Unknown to them, Rei and Yudo are watching them from a distance. Yu reveals that he knows the dudes from the last base, and this just means that they have managed to find the right location. Rei mentions that he would like to attack the dungeon immediately, and to do this, he would like to know their security setup. Yudo explains that the last base was disguised as a private office, so they didn't have any guards. However, he can clearly see that the new place is different because they have destroyed the other bridges that lead to the location. In addition, they have set up a barrier over the walls using a skill. With everything he has seen so far, Yudo mentions that the only way into the dungeon is through the main gate, which is why the enemy has concentrated their firepower at the narrow entrance. This basically means that as long as they control the gate, they can block any intruders. Yudo urges Rai not to let his guard down because there are probably more enemies lurking around besides the 5 dudes at the gate. Yudo reveals that at the last base, there were at least 30 people coming and going. Rai asks Yudo about their strengths, and Yudo mentions that the grunts are not that strong. However, he knows at least 3 people who are as strong as him in the guild, and these 3 are Jack, Coke, and Raven. Yudo mentions that average players have no chance against these 3. When Rai hears this, he smiles because he is prepared to have fun. However, Ray tells that it would be bad if others in the building managed to escape while they were busy fighting the strong 3. Since there is a bounty of 1 million yen per head, he suggests that they seal off the base to make sure no one escapes. This is when it finally dawns on Yudo that Ray is seriously doing the mission for the money. And Ray scoffs at him, asking him if there is any other reason why he should be doing it. The two then take a moment to think about their strategy. And Yudo speaks with a stern voice, telling Rai that they need to go with the lockdown strategy so that none of the enemies escape. Rai agrees with this, but says they might need reinforcements from Genesis Wings since they are opting for a prolonged battle. However, he is worried that the information might leak if they contact Tsukino. Yudo asks if they are to make sure that they contain the enemies until Genesis Wings arrive, and Ray says yes. Sweat drips down's face when he hears this because he doesn't know if the 2 of them alone can do it. With a smile on his face, Rai asks Yudo if he thinks the 2 of them are not enough for the mission. Ray then brings out his phone to contact Tsukino. In the text that he wants to send to her, he tells her that they have located the enemy base and they are conducting a lockdown. Rai wants Tsukino to send people who are suited for the strategy as soon as she gets the message. Rai then urges Tsukino to only send trusted players if she believes that there are spies in her guild. Rai then tells Yo that the moment he sends the message to Tsukino, they have to take out the guards at the entrance, which will immediately signal the start of the lockdown. Ray starts the count from 5, and the moment it reaches 1, he sends the text. Yutoto kicks into action and activates the acceleration skill. He dashes through the bridge in the blink of an eye, and he gets to the gate before the 5 even know what is happening. Yudo attacks the 5 and takes them all out without mercy. Rai is impressed because Yudo is still pretty fast even though he is carrying a heavy luggage on his back. Yu rides the wave telling Rai that the luggage is nothing to him. Once they get access to the building, Rai suggests that they prepare everything ahead of the fight. Rai opens his luggage and starts pouring out the contents of the luggage, which are wrapped coins. He spread the coins everywhere, and he told Yudo that everything is set, which means they just have to wait for the enemies to come out. The CCTV soon catches their presence, and it warns the soldiers inside the house. The soldiers waste no time rushing outside toward Ray and Yudo. Instead of seeing humans, Rai can only see money running toward him. He smiles while telling Yudo that it is time for them to rake in the cash. Once the soldiers are in the middle of the yard, Rai activates the coin explosion. which results in a large, devastating explosion that leaves the enemies trapped in the thick smoke. While they are trying to find their way in the smoke, Rai goes after them, and he starts cutting them one after the other. In no time, he realizes that he has taken down a bulk load of people. And he smiles because this means a lot of money for him. He admits that this might be better than some trials in terms of profit. Yu also takes the other side of the yard, trashing the enemies like toys. Suddenly, he sees an enemy lunging at Rai, but Ray is not even moving. Realizing that Ray is not going to move on time, Yuto jumps in to decapitate the enemy, thus saving Rai. Yuto berates Rai for not moving, even though he noticed the enemy coming at him. In Ray's defense, he says he cannot expose all of his tricks in front of a surveillance camera. In addition, he tells Yuto to stop saying his name, because even though the camera doesn't have the audio capture function, Ray believes that they might still be able to read their lips. After setting out this warning, Rai tells Yuto that they have provoked the enemy enough, and it would be nice if they destroyed the camera because it's in the way. With a single strike, he cuts down the camera. Meanwhile, Raven and his counterparts were watching everything unfold on the outside. They have been able to recognize Yuto, who is given the code name Mouse in their organization. However, they can't get a read on Ray's identity, even though they have cross-referenced his face with all of their database. Since Yuto has come to visit them, Raven figures out that Yuto now knows about his brother's death. In a flashback scene, Hashi was seen having a discussion with Raven in his office. Hashi told Raven that he had some questions about the next mission he had been given. Raven is surprised that Hisashi, surnamed Rat, is asking questions when the job should have been a walkover for him. In annoyance, Hisashi says the whole thing is not about the difficulty of the mission, but he is worried about the killing. Hashi says the client who gave them the task claims it is a request from a wealthy person with a grudge. But Hashi mentions that he is not a fool and cannot believe such a thing. Raven is pissed that Hashi is questioning their cause when it is their job to kill and get paid. Hashi then asks Raven if the client is trying to destroy Genesis wings. But Raven doesn't take his concern seriously. Hashi continues by saying the assassination target is a friend from the game era. He adds that the dude was a nice person and doesn't look like someone who would hold a grudge. Hashi believes that there is no reason to kill this person unless the grand plan is to crush Genesis wings. Hashi explains that healers are rare and easy targets, which is why their influence is significant when they leave an organization. Raven casually asks Hashi what he thinks he would benefit by killing such a weakling. Raven tries to play around the truth, but Hashi cracks it open, saying they are trying to block trial clearances. Apparently, the country is currently relying heavily on Wings of Genesis for clearing trials, and if the guild is destroyed, they will be able to halt the trial progress the way they want it. Since the Dark Guild knows fully well how to profit from the failure of trials, Hashi believes that this is their game plan. After hearing what Hashi has to say, Raven admits that he is right, but he lets him know that his phrasing is wrong, because it would be much faster to eliminate an entire nation instead. Raven says this can only be achieved if Genesis wings disappear. When Hashi realizes that the Dark Guild is trying to trigger another national trial, he expresses his concern about this, but Raven tells him that it is none of his business. Unknown to him, Raven's power was already crawling up on him. And before Hashi could move, Raven caught him with the Shadowbind. Hashi lets Raven know that he is not scared to die, because this would mean Yuto will be free from his grasp. Basically, he was being held hostage to get Yuto to do whatever he wanted. However, Raven reminds Hashi that he intentionally forbade him from contracting his brother because of a situation like this. Raven pushes his big spear into Hashi's chest, telling him that even if he dies, he can still keep his death a secret and continue using the way he wants. With this, Hashi was killed by Raven for realizing certain things he shouldn't have. When Chloe and Jack finally hear the story, they both tell Raven that he should have just kept Hashi alive so that they can play around with him. But Raven says he had to go because he can't afford to have any leaks. Cloak admits that Raven is right, and he talks about how he is looking forward to living leisurely in a resort once they destroy Japan. However, Jack tells Chloe that he might get tired of resorts, which is why he should stick to his bad hobby of toy collection. The tension between the two immediately spikes, but Raven tells them to calm themselves. One of the others sitting at the table suggests that Chloe take a desk job promotion, but he refuses, saying he prefers killing people because this is more fun and better for his health. Raven then asks his attendant how the soldiers are doing, but she lets him know that they have all been wiped out. Raven then decides to step in, saying Yudo is not their regular guy that normal foot soldiers can handle. Raven grabs his weapon from the wall, and he tells Chloe and Jack to join him. The two excitedly jump out of their seats since they are psychopaths who enjoy killing. However, Raven tells them not to underestimate Yudo because a cornered mouse will bite a cat. In addition, they have to be careful since they don't know how strong Ray is just yet. He lets Chloe and Jack know that they have to crush the enemy with an overwhelming force. Moments later, Raven steps out of the building, and Yudo is the first to see him. The moment he lays his eyes on Raven, his mood changes and Ray notices this. He asks him what the problem is, and Yudo tells Rai that the dude standing in front of them is Raven. Raven acts casually with Yudo, welcoming him to the base and saying he obviously knows everything, which is why he has come. Yu confirms this, telling Raven that he is there to avenge his brother. Without thinking twice, Yudo tries to activate the acceleration skill, but this doesn't work. He gets feedback from the system telling him that the skill has entered the cooldown mode, and it will be back online in 3 hours. Even though he is without the acceleration skill, he still makes the reckless move of going after Raven. As he leaps toward Raven, Ray can see that the dude has lost his composure. But he decides to back off in the meantime and let Yudo do what he wants. Just as he is about to reach Raven, Jack appears out of nowhere, swinging his giant scythe at Yudo. Yudo almost gets caught, but he manages to leap backwards just in time to escape death. He looks up to see that Chloe is also present on the scene. Jack makes fun of Yudo, telling him that he came to the base just to die. Realizing that Jack and Cloak are on the scene, Yutoto finally realizes how deadly the situation is. Rai asks Yudo about the two dudes who just came in because they are in the way. Yu has no time to answer his question because he is busy with Raven. He screams at Raven, asking him why he had to kill Hashi. Raven replies that it wasn't for any big reason, but because Hashi was already growing wings. So he had to clip them. Yu cannot believe that Raven killed his brother because he defied him. Raven makes the situation worse by comparing Hashi to an experimental animal that no longer has any uses, which is why it has to die. This only makes Yudo angrier, but while he was still processing the whole thing, Jack and Coke closed down on him. However, Rai blocks their path with the Soul Barrage skill, causing the two to crash to the ground. Ray then tells Yudo to face Raven while he handles Jack and Chloe. Yudo then runs toward Raven with the determination to kill him. But Raven tells him that he has no chance without his acceleration skill. Before Yudo can even get to Raven, he has created an ice wall to block the path. However, Yuito is burning with vengeance, and he is not about to allow an ice wall to stop him. He taps into a skill called Overheat Explosion, and with this, he crashes the ice wall, giving him direct access to Raven. Yuto believes that he is about to kill Raven, but he doesn't know that there is something else at play. Even though Ray is busy handling two strong guys, he could see what was wrong. Just as Yudo is about to dive headfirst for Raven, Rai activates the coin explosion, which throws Yudo back. Yudo screams at Rai, asking him why he did what he did. But Ray urges Yudo to stay vigilant, because something disastrous would have happened if he had not interfered. Suddenly, a giant ice spear falls from above and lands right where Yudo was previously standing. This is when it dawns on Yudo that he would have been dead if not for Ray's intervention. Ray being Rai tells Yudo that he just saved his life, which means he now owes him 100,000 yen. Rai also assures Yuti that he is going to make sure he wins because if he dies, there is no one who is going to pay his money. Raven becomes curious about Ray, and he asks him if he was the one who interfered with the guild during the mansion trial and the museum trial. Ray plays dumb, telling Raven that he has no idea what he is talking about. Since Raven is asking, Rai realizes that the guild has not figured out his identity yet, or even the fact that he is affiliated with Gold Farm. Raven then asks Rai why he is risking his life for Yudo, and casually replies that he is doing it for the money. Raven is surprised that Rai is willing to make an enemy of the Dark Guild because of money. But Rai tells Raven that money is the most important thing in the world. All while discussing with Raven, Rai is casually fighting Jack and Cloak with one hand. Rai then explains that the dudes are worth 100,000 yen each, and this also gives him the opportunity to sign Yudo to work for him for free. Rai then gets serious as a blue aura surrounds his body. He tells Raven that he killed Hizashi for the profit of the Dark Guild, but it is time he also dies for his own profit. Rai then activates the soul limit break skill. The moment he does this, Yudo gets the notification that Ray is trying to use the skill on him. The system lets Yudo know that the skill comes with a severe backlash. First is the content creation process. After having an idea, I will create an outline for each part. This is the idea, and this is the outline. After checking this outline carefully, I start writing detailed content based on the outline above. So this is my handwritten script. After I based it on that outline, after having the handwritten script, once this is done, we put it into a translation website. This is our internal translation website. We designed this website specifically